Welcome in, Dirk. Everybody say hello. There you go. Oh wait, no, I don't have your audio on yet. I was stupid.
Uh-oh.
There you go. It's okay.
Uh-oh.
In
They're
the
like, what
YouTube
are you?
video, it'll work, but not here.
They
All
got,
right,
they got
everybody. Welcome in,
confused.
Dirk.
There you go.
What's up,
I
Amunra?
had some French for les francophones ici. I had a little bit of French in it. It
Ouais,
was
il parle
okay.
très
We'll
bien
be
français. Euh,
okay.
il parle très bien français.
The problem is I won't have any like star citizen terms in French. It's just like I'm not gonna know what any of them are.
That's fine. Don't worry about it.
But
Don't worry about it. All right, I think we're almost through all the notifications. Nope. I take that back. Let's try this. Sometimes this helps kill it. I
there we
think we're
go.
good. Oh, we gotta wait for the
Well,
camera. There we go.
oh,
It's OBS.
okay. We're back. We're good. We're golden.
Oh nope.
I mean, while we're waiting for the pings to end, I can talk a little bit about I guess the podcast and stuff if you want.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no. So here, let's just go ahead and jump right into it. So we're gonna get to know Durnk a little bit, how he became a star citizen, how he got into racing, and what keeps him in it. So yeah, go ahead, Durnk.
Yeah. So I pledged in. I've been following. I'm one of those that's been following since 2012. I'm sure that's most like hardcore fans. But I didn't pledge until 2016, and then I still didn't play until like the start of COVID-ish. I didn't, personally, I didn't have much content there that interested me. You jump in once in a while when you got the pledge. But until COVID, I think it was like 317-ish, 14. I can't remember. Anyways, that's when I started playing for real. And I didn't start racing. I didn't even do any racing for a good few years. I was in a big org, Nova Intergalactic. I'm sure a lot of people know that name. And just doing PvP and fun stuff. And then my buddy, who goes by Scuttled, I'm hoping to get him back in soon here, but he got me into racing. He was like, "Hey, there's this race coming up with this thing called XGR, which is Extreme G Racing. Um, and you come on, like come fly, come learn and do it." And I was I was so it's funny looking back. I was so reluctant and kind of pushing against that a little bit with him and like I don't know, I wasn't that into racing. And then I jumped in and I started to fly and I just started to love it. Just started to love racing in a 6 degree of freedom environment. Um, and the community was really cool. If anyone doesn't know, there's like a few big like orgs. So there's Extreme G Racing, there's Atmo Esports, and there's Anzia Racing. Um, Anzia hosts a lot of really great events over the years or throughout the year. XGR also usually hosts like a division race every year. And Atmo Racing doesn't do a lot of ship racing, but I mean they're doing their System 7 race right now. I've got it. I've actually got it on the other monitor. I'm like just keeping an eye on it. That's how deep I am into the racing community now. But yeah, Scuttle got me into it. I started flying, started racing, uh, started enjoying it, and I just fell in love, and that's all I've been doing really in Star Citizen since. Like I don't do that much PvP. I'll do it a little bit with my org, but I don't do that much. Let's see. Let's keep going with the life story.
Are you still with
I was in
Nova
Nova.
or?
No, I'm not in Nova anymore.
Gotcha.
So I was in Nova, and I tried to start a racing team there a little bit, but I wasn't. I didn't really find that much success. And then what ended up happening is through XGR, I ended up meeting a lot of different people. And eventually, where I ended up is where I am now with Sanguis Luna. It's like we're a PMC org, a little bit on the, I don't know, we're not pirates, but we're not on the totally friendly side of the law all the time, right? But we have a ton of fun, and I basically I knew the organizers, or not the organizers, the founders and stuff, and the leaders of the org pretty well from Nova days because they had left Nova too. And I basically went to them and said, "Look, I really want to start a racing team. I think that this is like some untapped potential." And I said, I will create a team in your org, and I ask if you can sort of sponsor us a little bit, and if we need AUEC for ships, if you can help us get it. And racing ships aren't even that expensive, but asking an org to sponsor with money is a tall order a lot of the time. But they were down, they were super into it. And since then, as the race team captain for Sanguis Luna, we call ourselves the Rum Runners as the team itself, but we have been extremely successful. Um, I should pull up our accolades list for myself to peek at again, just to remind myself. But um, just in like the last year and a bit, oh, what happened? Oh, great, my form broke. Lovely, my Google Sheet broke. Okay.
Well,
Anyways,
before you get into
we
that,
have,
so we can get a little backstory on it. So what's the racing like in Star Citizen? Because I mean, most of us who play the game have seen, the racing contracts that. Well, I guess they're not in the game anymore, but they were in the game at one point.
yeah.
And then we all know it through Arena Commander. What? How do the events work? For example.
Yeah, well, it's funny because yeah, people got a peek at it with Arena Commander and with the missions, and those missions are supposed to come back from what I've heard, because we always are bugging CIG staff about it and asking what happened to our racing stuff. What did you do? um, and they've said that I think something about how they're trying to update their mission system. It just kind of broke the checkpoint setup and everything. Um, so they've disabled it temporarily, but that's supposed to come back. But I
Okay.
started racing before any of that even existed. Um, so like to learn a track, you would go onto there's a website called scr.gg, and I recommend everyone check that one out because that has all of the different tracks on it. And you would have a video that showed like the layout, and you would learn the layout, and then you would go and try and then record your runs and then post it on this board, this time trial board. Um, and yeah, there's lots of different for actual races. There's lots of different formats. Um, but yeah, it. Oh, sorry, I was reading the chat. Désolé, Lola, je peux ralentir un peu. I can slow down a bit.
We'll do a little recap. Yeah, we'll do a little
Yeah, we
recap.
can try it. We can do a little recap in French. Sorry, where was I? So I think I don't even know if I answered your question. I keep going on these tangents.
No, it's
I'm
all
a bit
good.
of a
So like, yeah,
yapper.
so
Apologize.
because you were gonna bring up the accolades of your team, I just kind of want to understand like, what are you racing for? Amongst the community, is
Oh
it
yeah,
just
sure.
bragging rights, or is it really just, or is there like actual like prizes and stuff involved? Because I've talked to Kelsar about it, and so I know a little bit of how the Atmo esports and all that stuff goes. But yeah, from somebody who actually participates in it, what are you racing for?
So it's not just like bragging rights on exhibition races, yes. Um, but most races now in the community have big prizes. So like the most recent one, most recent like big race was or not Atmo, sorry, Anzia Esports hosted, or Anzia Racing hosted one called Crux Cup 24 Hour. I have the flag in the background here. You can't see the whole thing, but that was from that event. And that was a 24-hour race. Format's very interesting. I check out anziaracing.com to learn more about it. But that one, the top prize was a Saber Raven coat.
Oh wow,
And
that's pretty
yeah,
rare.
yeah, and not only that, there was Anvil Valkyries in the like top prize, because you have 6 team members, so there's 6 prizes. There was a glaive um, prize as well. What else? I'm trying to remember what the other one was. Oh, and some peregrines. But there's some really legitimate big prizes that you win for this. I've tried to figure out what my personal prize hanger amount is, and by pledge value, personally, I'm sitting at like past 1,000. I think my pledge value is in the 12 or 1,300.
Thanks to
Um,
some of the wins and the prizes.
yeah, just from winning races.
Oh wow, nice, very cool.
Yeah, it's purely from winning races. There's like one giveaway in there, I think, but um, yeah, if you hit the podium, like the smallest prizes are usually like a $25 something in the pledge
Okay.
store. Yeah, it's pretty good. It's really impressive. Yeah, I mean like Daymar Rally has huge prizes. I'm sure a lot of people know about Daymar Rally.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, San Luis Luna, we won the 24 hour. So one of our members got a Saber Raven. Fresh actually, Fresh 001. If you ever see his name, ask him to see his Raven because he's
I
got one.
I definitely will because I don't think I've actually seen them in game because they're so rare. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we've all seen the pictures. We've all seen everybody talk about them, but yeah, you never really ever see them. So okay, so um, I'm going to go off on a tiny tangent before we go more into racing and then talk about master modes.
Yeah.
So how is so okay to give the reason why I'm asking this. So 2 weeks ago was we did an event that Flow the Pro organized for low flyers called Gravity Rush, and
Right.
I spent 3 weeks promoting training for the event because I was super excited about it. And event day rolls around, and well, we roasted the servers, and I got like two flies in before stream. Spent the first 2 hours of my stream playing marbles because my character was broken and completely locked out or shard locked, and then just could not respawn. Uh,
Ah,
so I didn't get to get back into the event till like the last hour, and when it was the whole point was to be there with 90 low flyers, right? Um, the I only ended up flying with about 15, 20 people at the end, so that was pretty just that was pretty, yeah, disappointing for me. So the reason so how is stability, how are bugs, and all of that during an event and racing? Have you guys, I mean, is that something that seriously affects you? Do you guys somehow get away with it, or is it spaced out enough that there's never too much load on the servers? How does that work?
um, I'll say we don't often try to get 90 people on a server. It's pretty rare. So like we don't usually end up with some pretty major hiccups. Um, but there have been race events that we've had to cancel because of bad server performance, because of bad desync. Especially if you're racing close to other people, you can't, if you can't rely on where you visually see them, you can't race them because you'll just run into them.
Yeah.
Um, but we've been really lucky, I think, in racing, and I think it's one of the few loops where you don't need a lot of things to work. You just need to be able to get into the server and get into your ship really, and be able to see where other people are. And obviously, that doesn't always work in Star Citizen.
Yeah.
Um, but usually, I find organizers try to. I mean, CIG has a fairly predictable release cycle. The way that they release things. Usually, when you see when a PTU drops, you can predict pretty well. You got about 3-4 weeks sometimes, depending on the drop and depending how big it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
They also like to release things at certain times a year. So they try to pick when patches should be more stable. But we've been pretty good overall. Like the 24-hour race, that one was probably the biggest ask for Star Citizen servers,
Mm-hmm.
and it went well. It went really well. We had to change servers. I think it was 3 times. No, two. Maybe it was three. I can't. One happened, I think, when I was going down for my nap, so I can't remember if it was three or two. Um, but it worked well, and like we just called it for the 24-hour. We just called the red flag, reset the race, found a new server, and then went again and kept going. And
Got
just paid
you.
attention to how it was doing, right?
Got you. So that makes
Uh,
sense. Okay, so you guys do call red flags, pause everything, hold the timer, get back into stable situation. So how long does that typically take to switch over and get back to racing? Like, how do you save your position at that point? Does everybody just start back from the starting point?
depends on the race. 24-hour was an endurance format, so it depends a lot on the format. I run every year a race called Gladiator Showdown, where we take gladiuses and race them around Yadar Valley, which is one of my favorite tracks. And in that format, what if we have to find a new server, we just wait for a break between heats. Like, okay, we've completed this race and this race. Okay, this server's too bad. We'll take a break. It takes like 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Depends on the racers too. Racers are really fast and efficient, turns out, at getting back to track
Nice.
and getting set up. So it's not too bad. Um, 24-hour, I think it was, yeah, it was about 20 minutes, 30 minutes between like total as far as getting to everyone to realize, okay, we're resetting, getting to menus, confirming everyone's in menus, launching, and then getting everyone back out to the track. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's like everything. We're completely susceptible to what stability is like. And if it gets into a worst case Ontario, then we just have to cancel the race, and hopefully we can host it again at another date. But it's been pretty good overall. There's just been probably one in every 5 races runs into a complete dead. Like, okay, we can't do this anymore. We have to end it.
So was it the Daymar rally? They had changed the server size to accommodate better performance.
I'm not totally familiar. I know CIG worked with the staff. If I don't, I think they did. I can't remember. Daymar, Atmo Esports, who runs Daymar, they're a little more secretive than the other groups are, so I don't have an in there necessarily where I can talk to them about this stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
I know they have had at least conversations with CIG about helping with the servers. And I don't think they ever did any private servers because they like having their servers be um, uh, messy. They like Daymar Rally being messy. That's kind of part of the sell for the rally, and fair enough, you know.
Yeah, it's
Um,
wacky races. It's yeah.
yeah. And so, but with like the 24-hour, I know CIG was going to help, but then the patch dropped right before the race happened, and they weren't able to do the things that they wanted to do. Um, but they'll help if they can with the big races. But for the most part, we just run on what everyone else is, and work with what everyone else is working with.
I don't think it was private servers because I do remember seeing it was Shugo, Shugo the lucky one, who I know is also in the racing community.
Yeah.
I forget if it was Daymar Rally, if it was a 24-hour, but there was one where they had reduced server size to help accommodate, and it was like instead of 500 or 600, I forget at what point this happened. I think it was a few months ago. It was like 230 or 250. Um,
Mm,
so that's cool. Okay, we'll just touch on this
that might
really
have been
quickly.
Daymar. I wouldn't be surprised if that was Daymar.
And and I think that's actually really cool that CIG kind of steps in to help out because this is all things that help promote uh, their game. And if you I get the feeling that the racing community is pretty large and very involved in the game too. So you want to make sure they're at least able to compete. So sorry, the last thing I was gonna bring up, what was it? I forgot. It's fine. We'll come back later or not at all.
We'll
But
figure it
no.
out.
So I guess moving on to master modes. But I guess before we go too deep into master modes, let's start with this. Did you feel a real big difference in how you raced when master modes came into effect?
Yes and no. Um, Before master modes, the predominant strategy was in turns to pitch and strafe up at the same time, and that was the fastest, like without any doubt, and that was how you had to race. After master modes, the strafe up and strafe down is kind of like it's still in the air. We're still trying to lab it out and figure out what's better, but it doesn't seem like you need it anymore. You can't before master modes. You could adjust your trajectory using strafing thrusters mid-turn fairly easily to avoid a collision. Um, After master modes, you're a little more locked into your turn, and in order to avoid things, you can't just like strafe out of the way. You have to straight up turn out of the way. Uh, but the same principles that were the fastest before are the same as they are now. One of the key principles is something we call TVI management. That's like that velocity indicator, the 2 chevrons on your screen. Most people don't know this. The vast majority, I think, of the community doesn't know this. But if you want to have the highest top speed, you need those chevrons to be like dead center on your crosshair. And I'm talking like you can't even be a little ways off, like even a millimeter. And if you glance at your speed, you're losing 3 or 4 meters per second. And when you're doing time trials, and you're trying to get your fat. That's a lot. Like you lose seconds on your lap time. Um, so it is different. And I also think that there was sort of like 2 stages of master modes that happened. I don't know if other communities felt this, but in racing there was like the first iteration of master modes that we got, and then they did a big tuning pass And in the first iteration, a lot of the racing ships were just straight up unflyable. I actually took a break. I wasn't enjoying it. And then they did a big tuning pass, and now it's a lot more fun, and it's back to a really enjoyable flight model, at least
Yeah,
for
the
racing.
tuning pass was they reduced drag and they made they for me the best way I would sum it up on the tuning pass is they made the impression of speed feel better. When
Yeah,
first Master Modes first came out, you felt like you were just going you were just 2 miles per hour everywhere you're going, and it wasn't necessarily that the speeds were that much different besides the combat speeds, but um, it was just there was the camera wasn't thought hadn't been adapted to these new modes, and it just kind of fell off because in low flying we had a very similar experience when master modes first dropped. A lot of people were like first we had to figure out so I'm sure
yeah,
same with you guys in racing. Okay, well, wait, so how do we do this now? What's the best
yeah. What
setup? Like,
what changed? I'm confused. Yeah,
what are all these options now that I have to go turn off and go look
yeah,
in the options and figure this out? And so there was that curve everybody kind of went through, and I feel like the racing community and the low flight community are pretty similar in their approach. So there was that adaptation period, and then after that, yeah, it just didn't feel good until the tuning pass came in, and then I think a lot of people got uh, interested again. Um, but you know, that tuning pass was super necessary, and we haven't had anything since, and it's been like 7 or 8 months or more now since we've had it. We've almost been in master modes for about a year or so. It was 323, three at the end of 322. No, it was
yeah.
323. We got what some
Was
refer
that
to as
four?
molasses modes.
Anyways,
Uh-huh.
yeah, yeah. It might have been 24. And it doesn't matter. 24 is when it was back to fun at least, for
Yeah,
sure.
I think that's when the tuning
Um,
happened. But yeah, I think we got master modes in 323.
Mind you, racing does everything in nav mode. I
Yeah,
think you guys do the
same
same thing in
as
low flying.
yeah, same. Yeah.
Um, the one thing I want to mention is I found it really funny reading Master Mode's feedback and reading PvP pilots and non-racers talk about how racing was gonna die, how this was gonna be the end of racing. You're gonna ruin this whole community, and we're all sitting here, what? What are you talking about? Like, and like, yeah, the first iteration was not great, but it wasn't slower. Like actually, the funniest thing, we have faster world records on tracks than we had before master modes.
Interesting.
So but pre-master modes, Snake Pit, the best world record I think like people were really pushing to hit the first like 30-second lap on Snake Pit. And like my best time was in like the 38, 37, 36 range. I can't remember now. It's been maybe I got down to 33. Anyways, doesn't matter. Now the record is like a 26-second or like 27. Like it's faster. I like the snubs anyways. That's what they have, a bit of a weird model, but like Snake Pit you can boost through the whole thing, so it's a little bit different too. But yeah, like I say, lap times have actually gotten faster on some tracks. So I thought that was funny because it was just people that don't have anything to do with racing commenting that racing is going to die and this is going to ruin it. And I think that was the opposite. We've actually racing is as big now as it's ever been, I think.
Interesting. Okay. Well, that's an interesting take that you don't hear often because, okay, I guess to come at it from a low flyer's perspective, there was a lot of animosity towards master modes. Um, without going into the whole PvP side of it, just purely focusing on like flying, for racing or low flying, I'd say, yeah, until the tune there was the majority of low flyers who were pretty upset, and
Yeah.
I'm not saying all of them thought it was terrible and decided to leave, but there was a lot of people who some there's just the first fact that some people just don't like change, right? You get used to something for a
Yeah.
bunch of years, and why do you have to go learn something new now? I can understand that. And it's also was the learning curve, like we talked about, figuring out how to do it again. I kind of agree with you though, even though it did change how you can low fly, it really it had a bigger effect depending on the ship you decided to use. So
Yes,
before you
absolutely.
used to be able to go low fly with a reclaimer, it wasn't great, but you could.
You can do it. Yeah. Yeah,
Now,
you can't.
not so
No,
much.
no, there's no chance. It doesn't. They basically they killed maneuvering thrusters.
Yeah.
So any pilot that heavily relied on maneuvering thrusters is having a really hard time now,
Yes,
and
absolutely.
that's
And
I think
I
that's
think
I
that
think
was
that's a
a
big thing.
that's a precursor to something else I want to talk about, which is
Control surfaces.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah, we can we can talk. Well, we don't. Well, actually, I was gonna before we. If I don't know if we're gonna move on, but the one thing I will say is that there are. I'm not. This isn't like a. How do you put it? Not everyone feels the same in
Yeah.
racing. Um, I know if I know if Speedweed, he's prominent in the racing community, especially in XGR. If he watches this or listens to it, he's gonna be like, "Shut the hell up, Durnk. It sucks. I hate it," because he hates it. He's not. He's really well. He's not a fan of it right now.
Gotcha.
Um, but I know other racers too that feel the same way. That they're like, "I'm just done. I don't want to do it anymore," and that's fine. I have found anyone who comes in newer who didn't get really ingrained in the old model hasn't had a huge problem with it, and they're able to catch up pretty quick. I really think that it's a big change, and so it's hard to learn the new way. And if you were been doing it a long time, it's basically especially the people that did racing for a really long time and were in it for a really long time. Those are the ones I find have the hardest time coming back, because it's a whole different way of flying now. Or not whole different, but it's different. You can't the
It's
old like you can't use the old tricks to
right.
get around things.
It's almost the same in low flying. There are some of the OGs who got me into it who don't
Yeah.
fly anymore. And, it's sad to see certain parts of the community leave. Now, I think there's, certain parts, certain things that people don't necessarily talk about, but it's also reality. Sometimes people just get over the game. If you've been in the game for 4 years,
Yeah.
it's hard to stay in a game for that long. So sometimes you just move on and hopefully they come back. But if they don't, they had a good run in the game as well. And I think a lot of people will then inevitably come back to Star Citizen when they finally get things together and we get to a closer product that's looking more like a finished product. I think naturally a lot of people will come back in just out of curiosity to see what the game's like. But
Yep.
when one of the biggest things that took out a lot of low flyers was the maneuvering thrusters changes. So the only thing
Yeah.
it did was it forced most of us to be flying in the same ship. So you're really mainly flying now in some version or some variant of a Saber or an arrow. And I'm going to say it's 80% arrows out there. And then it's, sometimes I'll fly my F7A. So a lot of
I was gonna say
people,
I love flying my F7 sometimes.
F7's
Yeah.
fun. The problem is it's got those wide wings. So,
Yeah. Yeah. You have to. I've clipped them a couple times. I one time I went out there, I clipped one wing, I went screw it, and scraped until I clipped the other one, and then I kept low flying.
that's the beauty of the
But
F7 is all the thrusters are on the body. So you can take off the tail, the two wings, and you're fine. It
yeah,
doesn't
it's
affect
lovely.
too much.
Great ship. I like that ship.
It's a really great ship. But yeah, so we got it removed some of the variety, and there was there's a lot of people are upset around the maneuverability of the 890.
Hmm.
And I've
Really?
heard some
Well, I
about.
guess low flyers had a lot of 890 low flyers, so I could get
I
it.
mean, it's a beautiful ship to see low flying when it's going.
Yeah.
Like it's
Totally.
awesome, and part of this is it's also a game, and that was an enjoyable thing. Now I don't think it's a make or break on the game for me, at least, and I do see some. I've always seen some positive to master modes, even though overall I do have some issues with it, and I still think I preferred the older model. But I think my main reason now, with some time, now that some time has passed and I've had time to reflect on it, is I think I missed the reward for having to train and learn the old model more than the immediate rewards you get from this model, which is, the learning
Hmm.
curve is not as steep as it was before. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing that it's a lower learning curve, because you made the point earlier, more racers who get into it now and who weren't affected by the old flight model have fun and get better
Yep.
quickly, which is a
Yep.
good thing if you're a game. As the player,
Yeah.
it
Totally.
kind of comes down to what you value in your experience, right? Some people like to train and work for it. Others want to get there a little quicker because it's a game. And I think both points are valid. And I think that comes down to how you personally feel about it. So it's not so much a good or bad. It's more of a what you know, what's your cup of tea. But
Yeah.
um, to keep going on and go back more to a bit of racing, do you, for example, with the race that you organize every year, the gladiator, the glad radi wait, what was it? The
Gladi for Gladius, and then Yadar is Yadar.
gladiator.
Gladiator. Yeah,
I
showdown.
was like,
Yeah.
wait.
Yeah.
um, the gladiator, that's gonna be the first ship to have. Now it'll have the control surfaces. They won't be active, but it'll have the control
They're moving right now.
surfaces.
Going game. They're moving around. They're not
Really?
active, but they're moving around. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. That just looks
Maybe it's
weird.
PTU. Maybe.
I think it
But
might be PTU. I thought it was
but
a PTU thing.
definitely at least the PTU for sure. You can see the flaps and everything, the ailerons and such moving around.
Gotcha. Which is pretty cool. Now, do you think that'll have a serious effect on how you handle racing in low atmo or in heavier atmo, I should say too, because racing on microtech with those control surfaces is going to be interesting.
Yeah. There's also racing kind of has, in my opinion, there's like three categories of racing. There's heavy atmo, there's low atmo, and there's zero G.
Mm-hmm.
They all have their different quirks. Definitely heavy atmo. I think it'll be good. Because even right now, something that's really interesting is that with the way the model is now, it's almost like the ships have a stronger aerodynamic pull than they ever did before. So in fact, on something like Snake Pit, when we're teaching someone Snake Pit, and they're like, "I'm sliding out, like I can't, I'm not, my ship's like not grabbing the air and turning." You actually, we actually push them to go faster, and the faster you go, the better the ship's grip,
Hmm.
and the faster you go, the better they will pitch and turn and grip onto the air. So hopefully, if control surfaces does the same thing, that just means that that's gonna be an even more dramatic feeling, especially in heavy atmo. So I'm looking forward to it. I know everyone in the race. I don't know anyone in the racing community who's not. Everyone thinks it's gonna be a good thing. So
Okay.
because at that point it's more like flying a regular plane, and then you kind of change your dynamics of how you fly it, right? I
I
think
think.
low fly, you guys might get a little. We'll see. Hopefully it doesn't screw you guys, but
Oh, I
for
think it's
you it's probably
gonna
more scary.
completely. I don't think it'll kill low flying, but there's gonna be a heavy shift because of it. You will.
Yeah.
It'll be more like low flying in Microsoft Flight Sim than it'll be low flying in Star Citizen right
Yes. Yeah,
now.
absolutely.
And that's unfortunate to a certain extent, but the reality also is that we tend to do much more of our low flying on lower atmo planets, not no atmo like a Walla or Lyria or um,
You might, with the changes, you might start going there more because it'll feel a
we may
little
have to,
more old school.
and that's kind of where I was going. Is I think the low atmo is going to be the weirdest place for a while because I think CIG is going to have to figure out how much thruster maneuvering thrusters are going to have to fire in low atmo compared to a thicker. And thicker, you won't necessarily need them as much because it'll just be like flying on Earth, right? You have thicker
Yeah.
atmosphere. You're gonna have a much more air pressure on your or lift on your wings, so you'll actually be able to bank and pull harder. And I think ships like the M50, the Arrow, will love that because they have bigger, surface planes to maneuver with. I think there are some
Yeah.
ships like the Snubs. It's gonna be weird. Um, I think they
Yeah.
will.
They're already weird.
Yeah, they've been weird for a while. Um,
Yeah.
but the very first thing I tried low flying in was in a Merlin. So
Oh,
they're
cool.
incredibly quick and a lot of fun, but they I feel like have been kind of put aside. I think the Fury got a lot of love, but I think all the other snubs kind of been put aside. So I
Fury,
think for
if in racing the Fury got fucked up. Sorry, I
really
don't know if I just realized I don't know if you're okay with swearing on your,
it's
but
18 plus, so
oh
be a
yeah,
dirty
okay.
sailor. It's fine.
Uh, Fury LX. Well, actually, I think it's a good thing because the original Fury LX. Um, so I was talking about top speed is your
Yeah.
TVI is in the center of the crosshair.
Mm-hmm.
The original Fury LX, the actual spot to put it was not in your crosshair. It was like top corner and right and to the side of the cockpit. So you'd be looking up, like your head tracking. You're doing like this. as you're flying the whole way, trying to hold it in that spot.
That's
Um,
weird.
yeah, so that was really weird, and it was like breaking records on tracks too, because it was like just it was doing it faster as well as any other ship. And then they changed that, and now it's just so slow. It's like
Really?
now it's like
Oh,
yeah, now it doesn't compete with any. It's not even close to hitting any records anymore.
oh. Well,
So
I mean, we all know that eventually there's going to be more balancing. And actually,
yeah,
that brings up a really good question, I feel like, which is if a lot of things are going to be control plane dependent, how their surfaces work, what's it going to be like for little ships like the Fury that's all thrusters?
yeah, I don't know. In from the racing perspective, it probably will never be competitive, just because I don't think they're gonna want a ship like that to be maneuverable as well as
Fast?
fast,
Yeah.
right? Because then you open the door to something being meta breaking in combat. Maybe they Fury LX, maybe they just boost it a little bit because it doesn't have weapons. Um, but surely not for like the regular Fury and the MX.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I don't know. I will say like racing, we usually tell new people to don't meta chase. You're just gonna have a hard time. You're not gonna enjoy it because the meta changes patch to patch. Right now, the M50 is the meta, and the Razor's close behind it. Where the P52 is the fastest for single laps, though. But like it was like 2 patches ago, the Razor was by far the meta. Everything else was slow, and then before that, it was the 72 was the fat P72 was the fastest ship by a good margin. So it's like at least in racing, we basically just adapt to whatever is the meta. We test and figure out what the fastest ship is, and then we fly it and we use it and we enjoy it. So
Yeah, there are some ships like that I just kind of stopped flying with master modes and then certain changes and patches. The Razor is a ship that nobody uses in low flying anymore because it has no more upthrust. Um,
oh, interesting.
and that's one of the things you need the most, right? So I'm not a big trickster, but people like Shakma or Flo or all these, or Ryu or Gilga, who are doing a lot of, tricks like rolls and spins and stuff like that. You need really good upthrusts, especially to be able to pull off those moves. Um, and that's why we always tell new people in low flying, go to an arrow because it's got the best thrust all around. And
Yeah,
so that's typically why you see that. The F7's still okay with up thrust, but the biggest nerf I felt was the Razor. It just you it makes more sense with now how you explain to me how racing works, because you essentially
yeah,
have to try to fly it like that when you're low flying
yep,
as well. You can't rely on your thrusters. You got to rely on where the ship's pointing.
yep.
Um, so you know how a lot of low flyers will do the 5 to 15 degrees of down, the nose
Yeah, you don't
down.
do that in
You can't
racing
do that.
ever.
That which is
So much
which,
slower.
yeah. I mean, the our point is not speed so much as maneuverability. Um,
Yeah.
so I don't know. So okay, let's just talk about master modes a bit more generally. How did you what were your initial thoughts on it just overall in the game, not just with racing?
Uh, I'm people disagree with me on this. I thought it was like I felt it was the right change or a good change. The moment that I was sold on we needed to get rid of this flight model, like with the old one,
Mhm.
was I was doing combat with a bunch of friends and in zero G, and it was one of those times when everyone else was like really good. I was going in a crew of guys that were all like ace combat pilot type thing, going up against another group of all ace pilots, and I'm I'm decent at zero G. Master mode zero G is a little different, but the old school zero G, I was really good, um, and so I have a really good control of my ship and a feeling of where it is in space, but I couldn't even engage or take part in the combat at all. Like I was trying to keep up with what the combat because everyone was basically just going like 1,000, 1,100 meters a second in a direction and like kind of just they're
Jousting.
kind of orbiting each other, yeah, jousting, and like I was trying to get involved, and it was like it was just stupid and boring. I was like, this is supposed to be the peak of combat, or maybe not the peak, but it's like the top, call it maybe the top 5-10% of combat level pilots, like fighting against each other. And I'm in here, and like I say, I'm a good pilot. I know how to fly. I won't crash into anything. I can, I can do tracks fast, and I just couldn't enjoy myself. As I straight up after a bit, I was like, all right, guys, you have fun. I'm gonna go do something else. I'm not doing. I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
And what that showed me personally was that if I have that problem and I'm already familiar with the model, I know I could have trained. I could have done the classes to figure out how to properly um like zero in on someone and stuff like that and taken all that time to learn that. But I think what's more important is that the person who shows up and plays for 2 weeks and then gets into a random bit of combat, they need to have fun. They don't have to win. But if that person gets it the first time they get, or the first like 10, 15, 20 times they get into PvP, they're just not having fun, period. And they don't feel like they can do anything or be part of the team, like, then they're just not going to play the game. They're going to quit. And for a game, unfortunately, people don't, the hardcore Star Citizen community doesn't like to hear this, but you need to cater to that player. You can't cater to the one who's going to spend 200 hours learning the model. You can't just put in you see this argument, or I would see it all the time about you just need better classes or better teaching of the model, and I'm like, yeah, yeah, but you can't expect people to put 30, 10, 20, 30 hours in learning how to get into combat, because they're not going to. They're
No,
just going to
I
quit,
I
and they're
agree.
going to
And
play something
then
else.
that's also not taking into account how Star Citizen is. It takes you 10 minutes just to do anything when you load into the
Yeah.
game. You know, get out of bed, get in an elevator, grab your stuff, grab a ship, get to your hangar, get out of your
Yeah.
hangar. That's 10, 15 minutes right there. You're not,
Yep.
it's not a quick start to anything. So, that's definitely, I completely agree with that point. I agree that the hardcore faction needed to kind of relax. This can't be a niche game. You're not allowed to. I'm
No.
sorry. For me personally, you can't have $1 billion game that's niche. That's ridiculous. Um,
No, the amount of fundraising this game needs to be at release to be successful needs to be, you don't have to be wow numbers, but you have to be like,
and
top
you have to
10 in
have a yeah.
MMOs.
You can't. No, I don't agree with trying to please everybody. That makes no sense. Trying to
Of
please
course.
everybody, you please nobody.
Yeah.
Kind of. So that's not what we should be going for. But my the biggest props I gave to master modes, and I think you touched on this briefly in terms of like ease of access. I brought in a bunch of new players I brought in a few new players when master modes after it came out to try and get some people, some buddies back into the game. The feedback was positive on master modes because they don't want to spend 20 hours learning how to fly, and I
Yeah.
completely respect
Nobody
that.
does.
Nobody does.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
and even then, even with master modes, people are still going to crash. I have some big gripes with master modes, but it's more in how the thrusters fire in certain situations more than the idea itself.
Yeah.
I think the segmenting of speeds really helped a lot of players get comfortable and get used to depth perception in the game. How are you approaching something? How quickly you'll come up on something? Understanding
Yeah.
the differences where you should be pointing your ship, where your pip's going, stuff like that. Um, and then you push them into the decoupled land, and then they're like, oh my god, what's this? But at least at
Yeah.
first.
Whoa. Decoupled. Wow. Yeah, no, same. First time I tried decoupled, I was like, oh shit.
Yeah,
This
it's
is awesome.
crazy. It changes everything.
Yeah. Yep.
It makes it feel like coupled is like easy mode afterwards. But
Yeah.
there's some great moments where you should be coupled, and then there's others where decoupled, especially in zero G, is going to be uh, way more advantageous to you, whether it be low flying or combat. I don't know I can't speak really for racing in zero G. Do you
Hmm.
typically fly decoupled or coupled in zero G?
Decoupled.
Decoupled.
Always.
Copy.
Racing and all, it's decoupled, turn off every assist. Because anytime you turn on coupled or any assists, what happens is the game starts to use thrusters you don't want it to use, and they end
Right.
up reducing speeds,
Yeah.
especially in turns. So,
We've noticed that as well in low flying, so we try to avoid that too. Yeah, turn everything off. Um,
yep.
but no, I think master modes did bring in some positive things. Now, we can start talking about this now. You do you remember the ISC when they talked to, or was it Star Citizen Live? I think it was Star Citizen Live, where they talked to Rich Tyler and I can never remember his name, but and they brought up the new operator modes, I guess is what they're calling it.
The next one that they're coming out with,
Yes.
next
So
version of this.
next
Yeah,
version
it's
of
no
this.
longer
Yeah.
master modes kind of
Yes.
thing.
No longer
Yeah,
mass
I know what you're
modes,
talking about.
operator modes. So now, and anyone in chat, please correct me if I'm wrong. I tried to go back and rewatch that part to remind myself of what they were saying, but it's going to be now you always have weapons and you have to choose between
Yeah,
speed or shields.
yeah,
I personally think that's a very bad idea. And it's because it's continuing a bad trend that master modes brought about, which was I don't like the fact that you have no shields in nav mode.
okay.
And I think that's a bigger problem for new players than more experienced players. More experienced players,
Hmm.
you know why you need to make that change sooner than later, right? And
Yeah,
you know where your risks are going to be. Like if I hit an OM and I see people parked around, I'm probably about to get lit up and it's time to go.
you got to drop an SEM immediately or leave. Yeah,
Exactly. And
yeah,
the problem is I myself, even on stream, have ended up in situations where I get to an OM and the guys are just so perfectly placed that you don't even have time to get your shields up before you're gone. And
yeah,
to go to your point of like wanting to make sure that players continue to put their time into the game so that we have a properly sized community with a good balance for the MMO to work, right? It can't all be hardcore players. It can't all be whales. It can't, you know what I mean? Like it can't be super niche.
yeah.
You gotta that point of like trying to reach a wider audience. Um, I think forcing people to not have shields when you're coming into a game that people have been playing for 13 years and some people put in a ton of time to learn all this stuff, you're immediately putting new players at a disadvantage. And I think the idea of constantly having weapons but choosing speed or shields is terrible. Why? Because all it does is it forces combat, and that's just going to frustrate the lower skilled player. Now, yes, I absolutely hear the argument of you need to train, you need to learn. It's not a hold you by the hand type of game, but
Yeah,
there needs to be a balance. It can't be please everybody because like we said, you'll please no one, but it can't be please a very particular, specific group of people in the way they play because otherwise the rest of people won't identify with that, won't latch onto it, right? And that's what you want. You want people to latch onto it and okay, I get this, and then for
yeah.
them
It's
as they
fun.
play to progress and get better, right? But you want them to have
Yeah,
a certain basics. And the situation that this new operator mode is going to create for me is you'll have people who are heavy PvPers chasing down people in certain areas, whether it be, an outpost or around space stations or stuff like that. And those players are going to try to run, so they'll go for speed and low shields. But what's the guy
I don't
chasing
know.
them
You're
going
gonna
to do?
die.
Well, he's going to do the exact same thing. And because he has weapons, he has nothing. He doesn't have to give up anything, and he's in a
Yeah,
completely advantageous position. So that's my biggest gripe with what they're bringing with operator modes. I really hope they think that part through because I think that'll be a huge problem for the community. Now, will it affect racing and low flying? Probably not as much.
yeah, well, yeah.
Uh,
Wouldn't matter. We
yeah,
take our shields off actually because the
exactly.
weight savings. So
So, and then,
yeah.
I think control surfaces like we were talking about will be a bigger deal for racing and for low flying. I think you guys I think it'll get me into racing more, to be honest. I'm actually kind of looking
Fair.
forward to that in terms of racing. But
Yeah,
in terms of low flying, I think it's going to I don't want to necessarily use the word ruin, but it's going to heavily affect the tricksters
yeah.
at
It'll have a big
least.
impact for
Yeah.
sure.
I love to be
Yeah.
as low as possible for as long as possible, which is typically about 30 seconds. But that I find much more enjoyable and like thrilling than, doing tricks and spinning on myself in the air, not as close to the ground. Uh,
Yeah.
so I guess for a low flyer like me, I don't think it'll be too much of an issue. But for people who are heavy tricksters, I think, yeah, heavier atmo is going to kind of go out the window. But I'm still really curious on how they're going to find that balance on like a Daymar, on like an Ignis, on like on a moon that has some kind of gravity, even though it's light, and has some atmo, even though it's still pretty thin, compared to
Yeah.
like Lawala and Lyria really have zero atmo. Yes, and Cincy
Well,
makes a great point.
we'll still find it. Yeah, we'll find a way to annoy Reddit every time. Yeah, it's funny every time something about racing gets posted on Reddit, and like half the time, all the racers have to be like, no. But I think what could be interesting is theoretically the surfaces only kick in past a certain speed. If that speed is higher on low atmo locations, maybe because you guys already use a speed limiter,
Yeah.
maybe you're going to be limiting yourselves low enough that it won't matter. The control surfaces will just never activate, and you'll always be with your maneuvering thrusters. Or maybe low flyers will just have to, instead of 220, you'll have to go down to 180, and it'll, you know,
No,
I don't
I
know.
that's actually a good point that I
There's
hadn't thought about. And there maybe there'll be options to be like, no, I don't want. I want my thrusters firing all the time. I'm not interested in the speed. Maybe there
yeah,
will be things to do through the MFDs, which would actually kind of make it cooler and help with the immersion of setting up your ship. Now, I hope they have presets for people who aren't as interested in that stuff as like some of us are, because
yeah,
again, going back to the ease of access, but then allow us to kind of go in and fine tune things a bit more to find our liking. I really hope one day we get to swap out thrusters on our ships for more powerful ones or more
oh yeah,
efficient ones. That is my
yeah.
biggest
Racers talk about
hope.
that. The
I mean,
racers hope for the world where you're like tuning thrusters and you go to so and so's chop shop. Like Speedweed loves this idea because he always talks about having the Speedweed's chop shop, and you show up there and he's got like he hooks you up with the fastest thrusters, and
yo, I like this
everything
guy
kind of
already.
thing.
Hold
So
up, I gotta get
yeah,
his number. I need this info.
yeah, yeah. There's that's totally racing is super excited about that kind of thing.
Actually, and kind of like that too. What I got excited about with crafting was I was like, cool, I'm going to mass manufacture arrows for low flyers.
Nice. Yeah, hell yeah. It's because they're gonna blow a lot of them up. Yeah,
Exactly.
but it's the same thing about racing. We're like, we're okay. It's like suddenly it's like, are we gonna be racing for pink slips because you have the
Yep.
upgraded ship, or like, are we gonna have to, you know, you actually won't race in on a real PU track for a long time until you're like really talented? Because really, it's only like the top like if I were to go through the whole list of racers, I think it's only maybe the top 15 that I could realistically say can go do a full race. And if they are flying with the intention of never crashing, won't crash, but like they're not pushing as hard. But most, most racers, the vast majority also crash a lot. You know what I mean? You crash more to crash
Yeah.
less, right? It's the
And
same
then,
thing in
you
low
know,
fly.
that's not even taking into account when the game decides you should crash. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, oh, so okay. One last thing before we take a quick commercial break and we talk a bit more about what we crafting and the different specs for ships and how that'll affect racing, and go into a little bit more about the future of master modes and what we'd like to see. So yeah, now we're gonna change it up a little bit and talk about the future a bit
Yeah.
more than just control surfaces and stuff like that. What do you think, or as a racer, what do you hope for example, in the racing guild?
Um, this is where I get worried when I see things like the racing guild. One of the things I think is a major positive about racing is that anyone can get into it, anyone can get involved, and you don't have any disadvantage. We're all a level playing field. What I worry is that they're going to introduce too much, um, like, I mean, and mind you, the organizers will probably just say if you're showing up to a race, you have to use a default ship. Um, but then at that point, then what's the point of even spending all that time grinding? If you're going for the biggest race of the year and your ship's not, you're not bringing your upgraded ship that you spent the last 6 months grinding for, what's the point of even having that ship? It's one of those for me that's like I'll have to just wait and see to really say. I do think it'd be cool if there was a format like there was an F1 format where basically it was like, yeah, here's 10 orgs that have the backing to upgrade to the fastest possible ships, and everyone's trying to design the fastest ship. And it's a race between the racers as much, between the orgs as much as is a race between the individuals in the cockpit themselves.
So you
Because like I
think
don't know if
it'll
you,
become a much more controlled, organized group thing, and less solo racers being able to come in? Because I mean,
Yeah.
when you with the point you just made, essentially, if you're a solo racer, solo player, unless you are spending hundreds of hours manufacturing ships and trying to upgrade them, because that's something I want to talk about too, crafting and how that'll affect it.
Yeah.
Like that seems like a huge hurdle for the solo player who wants to get into racing. Or maybe they'll only be able to do, using your Formula One example, feeder events. Like they'll only be able to
Yeah.
at best do Formula Ford. They'll never
Yeah.
see
They'll only be able
Formula
to do
3.
stock car.
Yeah,
They
they'll
only
never
get to do
see
stock car
Formula
racing.
2, and they'll never see
Yeah.
Formula 1, which
Yeah.
I think is a little disappointing. Um,
Yeah, because right now it's like literally anyone can show up, they can train, and then they become the fastest. And every so often someone shows like Fresh 001 is, in my opinion, the fastest racer right now. I have spent a lot of time training him, so I'm a little biased there. But he does win every event he goes into. So, um, uh, but he at one point, he was slow. No, I wouldn't say slow, but like he wasn't nearly the fastest. And then he spent the time training, and now he's the best, right? And although sorry, before we go too deep into the crafting stuff, you were talking about the guild. Something that is really interesting about guilds and like event stuff that I hope they do is they briefly talked about. Sorry, I do talk. I just realized I do talk really fast.
you're good.
What's his name?
You're good.
They briefly talked about um, having the live events, or what do they call it? Dynamic events.
Mm-hmm.
And where like an example would be they might just announce there's a race on a server, you show up, or whatever location, you show up to the location, everyone lines up, and then the game itself hosts the race, right? um that'd be really cool. I hope for things like that. I guess the guild will probably be the avenue where you like progress through the tracks to unlock all the missions, to unlock all the tracks. Maybe could be cool. I think it'd be cool if the guild, if you hit the max level of the guild, it hits a point where doing laps on a track actually does generate you a really good amount of income because you've grinded it out, and now you can just run laps on your track and get times and get good money based on your times. Because that's how the missions are right now, is you get money when you finish, but it's just so small. It's like never worth it, and it takes so long to reset. But the guild, it's a little weird because um, the racing community is so self-run that like that side of things is kind of hard to see what kind of impact it's going to have, or if racers are even going to really care, because we already just run everything ourselves.
So then, do you think they'll have a rep system? I mean, that's kind of what we're looking at, I'm assuming.
That's what they have now, kind of. um when you first get in, you only have one track unlocked, and you have to finish the track a few times, and then it unlocks the next one. Then you have to finish that track a few times, and then it unlocks the next one. um but yeah, I don't know. The guild, I guess I'm unsure what kind of impact that's going to have. Maybe you have to gain the rep in order to unlock the right craftables or components or something in order to craft the fastest stuff. I could see that being linked.
I hope not,
Um,
because then everybody would have to get into racing to potentially have faster ships. Like PvPers would have to
yeah,
too. Because then, yeah, and I think, and the reason why I say that is I don't want it to become a situation where you have uh, things locked behind certain gameplay.
yeah,
Like a lot of people had, I think, really valid criticism when like most of the components were now locked behind doing contested zones or the exec hangar. You can
yeah,
now find them at Hathor, by the way, people. The grade C military for the most part, but you can find them. But I think that annoyed a lot of people who were like, well, I'm not a huge PvPer. I'm not a huge, group player.
yeah.
So,
I
and I
mean, the
think,
Hathor example, the one thing I just want to quickly is that I think that's just because it's so new. I don't think it's gonna be a PvP hotspot long term. That's the only interesting thing. So it's only a hotspot because it's the only thing that you can do. Technically, you're not Stanton's not supposed to be a hotspot for PvP,
exactly.
right? But it's just, yeah.
And I think
Anyways,
that's a
sorry.
great point. And it's important to remind ourselves of this because big picture long term, right? But then it's also valid to talk about the experience in the present, what's going on right
Yeah,
now, right? So I think
yeah,
long term We all know that things are going to change. There's going to be rebalancing on pretty much everything you can think of in game right now. Um, the reality will be that you've signed up for an alpha. You've signed up for things to change. You're donating your money. I'm just reminding people you are donating your money once you after you've bought a starter pack. So if you're buying a ship or anything,
Yeah.
they can change the specs and everything about that ship afterwards. So and I think that throws a lot of people off and creates animosity and frustration that doesn't necessarily have to be there. Either because you can go in understanding it a little bit better, or on CIG's end, maybe trying to nail down what they're selling you a little bit better. And I could use the Galaxy example as the one where there was, I forget which module was supposed to be available with it, and then they're like, oh no, we never said it was going to be there. We're
We're
like, wait,
just
hold
not
up,
gonna
but
do
there was
it
a
at all.
presentation at SitCon where you said it. It's like,
Yeah.
and it's like,
I
it
agree.
gets
I think they
muddy.
need to have way more disclaimers of like, and I know they do, but it's like it's just the way it gets marketed is just makes it seem like you're buying a product. And I said that to someone the other day. It was like, you do have to remind her. Like someone asked if they, I think, oh, we were talking about this, Latired. Someone said about them getting sued, and I was like,
Oh
no,
yeah,
they'd lose that lawsuit. I know the fine, like maybe for misleading marketing, but the fine print pretty clearly states that none of this is an actual product you're buying right now. You're just giving them your money
and I
for
agree. The point I've
nothing.
always tried to make is perception is also important, right? So if
Yep.
they keep pushing perception towards a live product, which if you were to only look at their marketing at the ship sale page, you'd have no clue, right? You really, like you said, it is in the fine print. It is there. It is also in
Yeah.
the disclaimer, by the way, whenever you guys click on launch the
Every
game,
time you hit purchase. Every time you hit
and
purchase
every
too.
time you hit purchase. But we also
Yeah.
know that most people aren't going to take the time to,
No, you just
it's
hit. Okay, agree.
exactly.
Thanks,
It's like,
because you
here's my
always do
money.
that.
Do I get my ship?
Yeah.
Like, um,
Yep.
so and I think you're absolutely right. And there have been people in the past who have tried to sue them, and they've all failed. Now I think it was PJ Papa Juggernaut made the point in the Discord as well throughout that conversation, which actually was really cool. Kind of back and forth that happened in the Discord. Like that was an interesting conversation. There was some good points made there. Um, they were forced to change some wording on how they present stuff. And that's big because it also shows that lawmakers understand that they are flirting with a very, very gray area. And,
Yeah.
that conversation started over the EU making certain changes on what they consider predatory marketing practices, essentially. And I'm very, very much in favor of those changes coming in. I don't necessarily think it'll affect Star Citizen, but I think that developers, studios as a, just the industry as a whole will have to kind of rethink some strategies, let's just say.
Yep.
I've never been a
Totally.
fan of FOMO. I've never been a fan of like hiding your true intentions. And I think Star Citizen has been guilty at times of presenting something that isn't necessarily true. But then again, you're
Hmm.
the point of it's still an alpha, it's constantly in development, you're donating your money, these things can all change, are absolutely valid. But I
Yep.
think where the problem will come in is if the marketing lets them push the look how cool this is more than the this is reality, at some point people are going to be like, look, you basically sold somebody on something that's completely untrue, and that I'm basically talking about false advertising, and that's where I think CIG needs to be really careful. I also think that is a part of the reason, probably not all, probably maybe a small percentage, but I think it's a part of the reason why this year is the push towards stability. You know what I mean? The push
Yeah.
towards things making more sense.
Well, yeah, I think this year they want to. If I had to guess, we're all making guesses here. If I had to guess, I think Chris Roberts is hoping that 2026 they can start actually selling it, selling the game kind of idea and selling the product. And if I had to guess, they're going to say at this 2025 sitcom, which now we know is not in person, which makes me say for sure we're not getting Squadron 42 released early 2026 for sure. Uh, if I had to guess, they're going to want to release Squadron 42 at 2026 SitCon, and they're probably going to want to be able to package Star Citizen as an actual product by that point. I would bet you they want to go into a beta by 2026. And I mean, yeah, this is all, guesses and everything like that. And like, um, we don't have any of the inside info, but to me, that's the most logical course so that they're trying to go down.
That's
Stabilize it right
interesting.
now and then try to have things like, I think they're going to, I mean, we already see it with Hathor. I think if I had to guess this year, you're going to see a lot more legitimate mission and like meat to the game. Because like I know people don't like to hear this, and I know it like doesn't make you feel any better about it, but legitimately they've been spending all this time creating the framework, and that is like the point of the alpha isn't to give any like in another game development they wouldn't have given a single shit about any of the stability. They would have just been trying to create all the framework, and then they would have stabilized it, right? And so they spent a lot of time just building the framework, and probably more time than if it wasn't a public like
Oh, that's not
test
even a question. It's a
product.
guarantee. It would have been quicker to not have a live product at the same time.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt. But then they wouldn't have the funding, so it's a catch-22, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're the only way they get the funding is by having a live product that you can sell to people, and then, anyways, I think we're going to see a lot more. Hathor to me is the smoking gun that we're going to see a lot more real, legitimate meat in terms of content to start to enjoy as they're trying to get dynamic server meshing done at the same time. But once dynamic server meshing is in, I can't think of any major technological hurdles they have left. Like at that point, you
Engineering.
can actually start implementing the meat of the game, right?
I think one thing we actually haven't talked about that we should talk about when we get more into the crafting conversation, but to stay on this really quickly, because I think this is a really interesting subject, and a lot of people are frustrated with CIG right now. Um,
Yeah.
I think it's important to understand why we're here, but I don't necessarily think it necessarily forgives. I'm gonna use
Of course.
Tarkov. Did you ever get into Tarkov?
No, but I'm very familiar with the game. I've just
Okay, so
never
you know
played
the
it.
game. Okay, cool. So
Yeah.
Tarkov,
Yeah.
I only started playing in like 2019, and I think it came out in 2016 was the alpha, and they had an alpha before it went into beta, and it's been in beta since 2017 or something.
Yeah, so it's had a
Um,
life cycle. Actually, thinking about that, it's been as long as Tarkov. Star Citizen Tarkov, like to be
almost,
honest, almost the same.
almost.
Like 2012 to 2016 was almost a wash for Star Citizen. Like again, people don't like that, and it's not forgivable, but it was like anyways. But yeah, they're pretty
It's
similar developments.
so Tarkov's alpha, because I had to go watch footage on it, was so bare bones. Like you said, that's what an
Yeah,
alpha is supposed to be like. You're laying down the foundations. I think you can explain and understand what happened with Star Citizen, but I don't necessarily think it forgives. They made a very conscious choice of, and I think you're right, and a lot of people don't give them or don't take that into consideration that 2012 to 2014, nothing happened. That was
yeah. Even
how
up to
much money can we get?
2015,
Holy
16.
crap, we got how much money? Okay, well, we got to
Yeah,
rethink our plans. And I don't
yeah,
think
and
a lot
it's
of people
it's CR's
appreciate,
CR's
yeah.
kryptonite.
Oh
It's CR's
man,
kryptonite,
he
man. You got given
is.
a blank check. Like,
He is. We all know that. I mean,
yeah.
the only way Freelancer got released was because Microsoft came in and was like, "You have to go, please." It's like,
Yeah.
it's like, we need you to
Yeah.
not be here. It's like-
Please finish this now.
but
Like,
he's
yeah.
a visionary, and you need those people
Yep.
who are gonna. I work in production, I produce, and I have to deal with people like that all the time. Directors who are like, "No, but I have
Yeah.
this idea." I'm like, "Yeah, but I can't. I don't can't make that's
I
impossible."
can't produce it in the timeline. And when you don't give him a timeline and you don't like there's outside pressure, but let's be real. He runs the show. He's the king of the company,
Yeah.
basically. He can do whatever he wants. Like so.
So, and I'm not saying he's been all bad. Absolutely not. I mean, look at the level of detail. Like, look at what you can just do in this game. Like the
This
feeling
just
you
wouldn't
get.
exist.
Yeah,
We'd only have No Man's Sky and Elite Dangerous, and anyone who's played that knows they're not even the same. I don't even like the comparison of the products. They're not the same
it's
product.
hard to compare the products. Like No Man's Sky for me is not really comparable. So the last game I ever pre-ordered was No Man's Sky.
And then you went, I'm never pre-ordering
No,
a game
done.
ever
Not doing
again.
that.
Yeah, say
But
I don't know if No Man's Sky was mine. What was my last pre-order?
it was
Ooh.
either No Man's Sky or Kingdom
Oh,
Hearts 3 for me. I forget. I
My
think I
my last
bought.
pre-order was Dragon Age Inquisition, and
Really?
then that was still a decent
That was a
game,
good
but like
game. I
that,
like that game.
it was like I liked it, but like it wasn't so mind-boggling. And I kind of went, yeah, I don't, yeah, same. I think that was the last time I pre-ordered a game though.
And then things just got way too funky. No, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I did the pre-order for Starfield because I thought that would be a good game to stream, and that was a terrible idea. That's right. I have to call myself out on that one.
Starfield was one of them that I like strongly avoided pre-ordering. I was like,
You were
I
smart.
can't pre-order this game. I don't trust Bethesda. And then it came out, and I went, ew, that's not the game I would want to play. Like, don't get me wrong, it's not horrible, but I would have been very disappointed if I pre-ordered that. So
So I mean, like, to go back to you touched on their release strategy, and I think that was really interesting because I am not necessarily 100% convinced that no in-person sitcoms means no squadron at the beginning of 2026, and here's why is because they have seen a decrease in funding, and I think there may be a push to be like, we got to stop kind of messing around, and
yeah,
we need to hit these timelines and get these things out, right? um, there was a lot of talk about, well, no, they'll want to do an in-person sitcom before Squadron to have potentially the actors come out and that team.
yeah,
I'm not convinced they're going back to the money thing. That's expensive. Their contracts were made
okay,
10 years ago. There was
yeah.
probably no clause to come do, or there may have been a clause that you had to come do an appearance, but with it being so long
Yeah.
afterwards, it's still going to cost them some money.
It,
And
what's his
Henry
name?
Cavill, super
Henry
expensive.
Cavill. Yeah, he's
Gary,
gotta be 10 times the price now that he was when
yeah,
they initially cast him.
Gary
Like,
Oldman, very expensive.
oh, you're never getting Gary. Yeah,
Gillian
it's
Anderson, I love her to
yeah,
death, but I don't expect her to show up to a Citizen Con. Um,
no,
who else? The Onion Knight from Game of Thrones. Can't never remember that actor's name.
yeah, yeah. No, I absolutely agree. Although, okay, what if? Because I see your point, and I don't disagree.
But I
What
still
if
think
they were targeting like a beta release 2026, early 2026, and then a full release? Because I really strongly feel they're gonna want to drop it at SitCon and make it a big deal. I
the
really
the
think that that's
Squadron.
what
You
they're
mean,
gonna do.
or
Yeah,
Citizen? Okay, so
Squadron 42.
Squadron. I because of the language used by CIG with regards to that timeline, that specific product. I would say, and I'm gonna bring up Sandy in a second, but the feature complete talk, the pushing for polish, should not merit a beta release.
I see what you're saying.
However,
Yeah, yeah,
however, I think it would be a great thing on their behalf. And this might be a little bit of personal bias playing in and being a little too subjective because of how much I want to play that game. Um, so I'm trying to take that out of the equation. But I I would hope they would do a beta release or a pre-release for people who have had a copy of the game for like 3 years,
yeah.
like
Because you can't buy
myself.
a copy anymore,
Nope,
right?
you
I don't
cannot.
think you can
That's
buy a
why
copy anymore.
I can't do anything with my starter package because my
Yeah,
Squadron 42 is tied to that, and I got it for $20.
same. Yeah, I have the same problem. I think I paid 45, but I have the same problem. I melted it once, and then I realized I went, oh my god, I'm screwed. And then I managed to get it back in the buybacks. But yeah,
and I know
same
not
problem.
everybody is excited about Squadron because a lot of people are really here for the MMO, and I totally respect that. But I love space operas. I love a great story.
Squadron's the original product that they promised. They didn't
Yeah,
promise Star Citizen.
exactly.
So,
And that's important to remind people of too. And sometimes even I forget. As you just reminded me, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. Shit. It's like, but
yeah, that's not Star Citizen is the I don't want to call it the afterthought, but it was the oh my god, we get so much money we could make game.
we
It
could
wasn't
do
the
this. Yeah, we could.
yeah,
That vision I've had could actually be a reality. So,
yeah,
and I think you need to understand it's twofold, right? It's this is an incredibly ambitious project mixed with reality. Like you want to really help push and give the possibility for that ambition and vision to come true while at the same
yeah,
time understanding that the reality doesn't always match up with what you want to do. um and I mean money wise, for example, like and like I mentioned that earlier, they had to completely rescope the project after their funding was skyrocketing. I mean,
Yeah.
they were only looking, I think, for like 5 or 10 million originally, and they got 75, and they're like, wait, hold up.
Yeah, you're pushing a billion. Like it's a ridiculous amount of money. And again, I mean, we said it doesn't forgive any of it, right? But my perspective now is, do I want the product? Do I still want the finished product? Yes, right? I still want the finished product. How do I get the finished product, or how does that happen? And unfortunately, it means that it's still a while of waiting and being patient and just, and again, not forgivable. You think of people that, I don't want to get dark, but people have literally died waiting for this game,
Yeah, no, absolutely, and
right?
that's a bad joke we all make, right? It's like
Yeah, but
this
they
is a
have
game for my
people.
grandkids.
I went from I've okay, it's gonna age me. People don't realize I'm pretty young. I get mistaken for being older than this, but um, I the game I started for 2012. I was in high school. I was in ninth grade. I like so maybe no, it was eighth, no, ninth grade in 2012. So um, I that's when I started following the game, and since then, I've gone to college, literally graduated high school, finished my trades training. I'm like furthered my career like immensely. I have a child, got married. Like since I originally thought this game was going to come out, I don't have any of the time
Yo,
that I thought I would have to play this
imagine,
game.
just imagine you started this at the end of high school. Imagine if you're
Yeah,
playing the full
no, start of
game
high
when you're
school.
retired.
Yeah,
When you're retired, or when you started high school. Imagine playing this only when you're retired. That would be insane,
I
right?
know. Yeah, yeah.
But okay, I mean,
Absurd. My
we're not.
kid's gonna be going to school by the time I'm playing this game. And I think like
Your kid will be playing
and
this game by the time.
with me on full release. Actually, she might be old enough by that point. Like, and she's not even two. And I don't know. I know we
Start
made
her
it's
young. You
like
know, it's like go karting. You gotta get them in there at 4 or 5 years old. That's
she's
the
gonna
right
be
age.
way better racer than I ever was. And then we've gone way off of racing here, but yeah,
If I ever
it's
have
like
kids, they don't know how hard their life's gonna be. They're gonna be training in go karts at the age of 3. They don't know this yet, but this is
I've been
happening.
thinking about that. I was like, I like legitimately have been thinking lately. Do I have to get her a controller in hand and start playing like some Rocket League just a little bit? Get her like, yeah, take her down to the track and start totally.
I
Yeah, I mean the
mean,
best. That's what they talk. They say I don't remember what the saying is, but it's something like the best time to train a driver is like before they're born. Or to start training the driver or something. It's something like that. It's like I
it's
think like
so as someone
Max Verstappen kind of thing.
who's actually trained people for driving, I've
Yeah.
trained people for stunt driving and drifting.
Oh, that's
Um,
really cool. I didn't know that.
yeah, it's a touchy subject for me, so I don't go into it too
Oh,
much.
okay.
But just because, yeah, I'm not gonna go into that. But anyways, so
Yeah, yeah.
the um the the reality is you soak up things when you're a kid, right? And more
Yeah.
importantly, you have no fear.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's a good and a bad thing. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's that's why, and it's actually really way better to start kids off younger than later. Um,
Hmm.
it's really important how kids learn to drive and their experience with it and how they see their parents driving. Like most people don't realize that, but you pick up on how your parents drive way more than anything else, or how your friends drive as you're growing up and getting older. Like when, especially in the U.S., it's not so
Yeah.
real. It doesn't really apply the same to Europe, but really here in the U.S. because
Yeah.
you're or Canada because you're in a car at the age of 16.
Yep.
Like let's be honest, you shouldn't be driving at 16, but you can with
Yeah.
the right training and the right like, like
Where I am at 17 actually. Well, you can drive at 16. We have a different. Anyways, we don't have to get into it. But
well,
you don't
but
drive alone until 17. But yeah. I mean, little anecdote here. I remember when I first started driving, and I've always driven stick, and I always thought I was like a pretty good driver. And then I remember one time going going down some essentially rally roads on some Forest Service roads with a buddy of mine, and he was just ripping ahead of me and flying. And then I just kind of realized that I wasn't pushing the car like I needed to if I wanted to go fast. Not the safest thing I've ever done, but
but at
that
least you did it on a forest
it was
road. and not
Yeah, it
on a freeway. Yeah.
don't do it on the street. No, no, no. You're right. But like that, and then that was suddenly that was like an epiphany moment for me. I've had other ones when I did iRacing, learning about like trail braking, but yeah, totally. Like, and I'll never be at that upper level because I just didn't start until I was a
Now you
late
can get
teenager, and
really
then I didn't
good,
even.
but that super quick instinct, yeah, it tends to
Yeah,
it's the muscle memory, right? It's the comfort with speed, all that. My
how to
dad
feel the car
constantly
sliding around in the
yeah.
corner. Yeah,
And it depends
yeah,
on what kind of a driver you are. There's some people who are very much based in technique, and there are others like me who drive with their ass. I feel
yeah.
everything.
Oh,
Like
you're what's his name?
Nicky
Londa
Lauda.
or Lauda,
Yeah.
Lauda. I have a
I
great ass.
I was born with a great ass. Maybe not. I
Yeah.
don't know. But that's my there's different styles of driving, and as an instructor, you had to kind of understand who your student was, right, and then tailor
Yeah.
it to them. And that's something we don't do enough in this country is understanding who your student is.
Yeah.
Um, and what's the best way to get the information across to them, because you can instill terrible habits and fear and trauma into people who need to be taught a different way, and it just creates a whole bunch of problems. One of the things that I really
Yeah.
enjoyed doing towards the end when I was doing that was helping people get over their PTSD if they had a
Oh,
driving
interesting.
accident and stuff like that. Uh,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's terrifying.
I did that with my brother. I did that with a girl who worked for me for a while, and it helped them a lot, and
Hmm.
that's something I'd like to do again. So I might end up opening up another school one day, maybe if this stuff all
Oh, that'd be
works
cool.
out. But
Hey, side note, hit me up. I would travel.
but no, to
But
get back to
to
get back to our
yeah, to tie it
podcast.
into Star Citizen, I can tie it into racing, which is that the youngest racers do the best. It's there's a huge barrier of entry in this game where you have to have a career and make money really to get into it, especially to buy sticks. So you don't have kids for the most part. You don't have teenagers playing. Um, but I was one of the younger ones. I mean, I'm 27, so I'm not that young. I'm young. I'm really young, but I'm not like sponge brain young. Um, and oh, I see. Shaky Gamer says he's like, sure.
Yeah,
As soon as I
what's the
finish this
question?
tangent, you can go ahead.
Yeah.
But those pilots who are in their early 20s, there's a handful of racers. Those are the best racers. I actually don't know how old Fresh is, but I gotta ask him actually sometime. But I
I'm
think
willing to
he's
bet he's
younger.
like 21, 22.
I think he's a little older. I don't know. Maybe he could be. But yeah, the youngest racers is like we kind of there's like a kind of a group of us that were in like mid 20s during then COVID hit and people were going to college but they had all the free time, and there's a group of us that kind of, I don't want to say squeezed out the older pilots, but basically the older community that had been there. We caught up to them really fast and we were faster than them within no time. And then same now, there's a lot of whenever a young guy gets into racing, they tend to catch up faster than
Yep.
especially older guys. And yeah, it's just
So experience can
learning.
count for a lot, but reflexes is huge, obviously.
Yeah.
Um, there are other factors that come into it in this game, like internet connection, what server you're
Yeah.
playing on, your region, stuff
your
like that.
your hardware.
Yeah, your
I,
hardware,
I
big
upgraded
one.
to a 9800 X3D and I did get better. Like, it's unfortunate, but it's the reality. So,
I mean, quick side note on Formula One games. There was one Formula One game I couldn't play at one point because I didn't understand why I was turning in too soon. It was because the frames were so terrible.
oh, you're just getting a split second later, so your turn-in point was just a little too far. Yeah, that's the other thing. My
Yep.
turn-in points after I upgraded changed on tracks. I had to like because it was just I was getting better response. Um,
And then the
Sorry,
higher.
but I don't want to let off Shaky too much. I don't want him
Yeah,
to not.
Shaky, what's your
You can
question?
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead and put your question in there, and I can answer it. I'm happy to. Um, but yeah,
Yeah, we
racing.
got
I
on
don't
a
know.
big
It's fun.
tangent
Yeah, we went way off of racing.
there.
Here, for someone who is interested in getting into racing in SE, what would your course of actions be? Just practice on courses, join an org. Yeah, great question. If I had, I probably would have eventually got there, but I go on crazy. I would say when I have someone who wants to get into racing, and I've trained and I've taught a number of people to get into it and stuff. Uh, Basically, there's like three discords you need to join, and it depends if you're talking ground or ship. I'm not a huge ground racer. I know a lot of really big ground racers that I could point you to, but I'm a much bigger ship racer. Um, you want to go to scr.gg first. That's like the home and the hub for all things racing. You'll see all the tracks. Then I usually tell people to join Anzia Racing Discord and the XGR Discord. Uh, there's not any racing classes now. XGR used to host one, but they have since discontinued it. I, I can't say it's going to happen, but there's plans in the works to start a racing class with Anzia Racing. So if that does happen, that'd be the first place I'd say go. But I would say I usually tell people to start in an Aurora, go onto a track. Either I recommend Lorville Outskirts or Icebreaker, and start racing those. Oh, and before I forget, Jacqueline's gonna kill me. This isn't the first thing I thought of. Oh my, he's gonna.
He has
I
some
will.
great instructional videos,
I
by
will
the way, on
post a link.
YouTube. Yeah.
Exactly. I'm like, that was actually the first thing that I tell people too. I'm like, he's gonna kill me that I didn't.
Like he's one of the first people that
Uh,
comes up when you search racing for Star Citizen on YouTube. Like he's
yeah.
yeah.
Here's a playlist. You can go. You go to the. It's reverse order basically because the newest or the top videos is newest videos about it. But I usually say actually watch this playlist and first like go watch through it its entirety for anything ship racing related. Taking that information, soak it in, because you're gonna get a bunch of little tidbits that you can go, oh, I didn't know. Like we talked about TVI management. Nobody knows about TVI management outside of racing. Um, turn-in points are not something that people who don't do a lot of real racing even think about. Um, things like that. So, anyways, and then I say start with an Aurora, do some laps of Lorville and Icebreaker till you feel comfortable, and you can do laps consistently without crashing. Then go into a Razor, because the Razor is usually consistently the most easy, enjoyable, not easy, but most enjoyable ship to fly in racing. Um, and then yeah, just keep practicing. Find people to race. Anzia hosts a lot of races. I say they have beginner classes, and because we're in a world where you don't have to care if you die, you don't have to like spend a bunch of time like unlike IRL where you have to spend a bunch of time racing and or learning and getting a license before they'll put you on a track. Just join every race you can and get the experience. If you want to be fast, you have to be racing early, or if you want to win races, you have to be because it's racecraft is different than time trials. But yeah, anyways, watch the playlist through. Find someone that is into racing that might be like I usually say, personally I usually say DM me on Discord, name Durnk, same name, and I will gladly guide you. I've trained God, a lot of people now. My best success story is definitely fresh. I've trained Jacketin actually. Those videos I kind of picked him up when he started racing, and I taught him and showed him the ropes, and then that's how he's ended up at the level that he's at now. Not trying to take any credit for them because it's all about personal work, but I can point you in the right direction totally.
Awesome.
Anyways, I hope that
So
answered it.
are people better off doing most of this on Arena Commander to start? Or should they be
Yeah.
going to well, I mean you can't right now because the racing contracts aren't there, but you can still go to the
Mhm.
courses and practice in game, but
No, the Arena Commander makes it so much faster. When I started playing, we didn't have Arena Commander racing. It was all like we were masochists. Like that's what we joke about is that we were all masochists because it was an enormous time commitment to practice a track. Like you'd get to your ship, you get out of we're practicing Snake Pit, so we're set up at the Tressler, the one at above New Babbage. But yeah, you get out of there, you fly out there, you race for 45 seconds trying to finish lap, crash. Okay, now another 5 minutes to reset. Okay, get out there, 10 minutes sometimes. You got to claim your ship, you get back out there, blah blah blah, crash, and now you just do that in AC, and you get like 10 times the practice in half the time, compared to the past. So totally AC. Start with the easy tracks, Lorville and Icebreaker.
yeah, I did
Yeah.
a random track and I had no idea where I was going. I was like, "Whoa, this is ridiculous." Sometimes
Yeah, some of those
the
tracks are not ideal for learning.
yeah, I mean, and there's also I feel like a lot more. You got to learn the track.
Yeah.
You really got to learn the
Yeah,
track. You cannot
100%.
push right off the
You gotta
bat.
take it really slow to start. Um, like I usually tell people, don't even worry about how fast you're going at all until you can do the track laps and laps without crashing and knowing what every turn is, and then you just start slowly picking up the pace and more until you feel more comfortable. And then when you hit a wall of like you're trying to hit like a time trial, at that point you want to find an experienced racer to talk to and send it videos and say, how can I improve? I mean, of course, I'm always happy to do one-on-ones too and help people because I know some people like guided sessions more than anything. Um, so yeah, like I say, I usually say DM me personally, but there are lots of talented pilots out there. Jacqueline's always happy if you're an EU guy who has EU time zone. Jacqueline is in Malta, so he's
Oh,
always
very
happy to
cool.
help people out. Yeah.
Very cool. All right, we need to switch gears to talk about crafting and the future of ships and their performance. But so we don't have to do this in the middle of it. We're gonna do one more commercial break. So, last thing we're gonna talk about is before we talk about this a little bit in French at the end is how do you think crafting and being able to have different tiered components is going to affect the racing world?
Yeah, I think I touched on it before. I think it's going to be up to the organizers, um, but likely we're going to end up with different classes. We're going to end up with like stock car racing, and we're going to end up with what do you call it in F1? What's the name of that style? Do you know the name
It's
for
just
that?
Formula One. The idea was that it was the highest tier and the pinnacle of technology and engineering. The
Right,
I don't I think I know what you're talking about, and if there is a term, I can't remember it.
because it's the same thing in rally, where like it's like the constructors are competing as much as the drivers are.
Yes,
Um, but yeah, I think that's where I think it's going to go. We're either going to have we're gonna see a separation of in racing, and I don't even know if the Formula One style is gonna be that popular, if I'm being honest, um, because of the barrier to entry, and there's a lot of pilots that are solo, or we're gonna see a huge rise in teams. Um, I've been a driver of that personally, that people join up with teams and race with teams, because I have found that to be the most enjoyable experience for myself, because then you end up with like a tight knit core group of guys. I mean, this morning we all hung out and just did some other stuff. Like, or actually, they were practicing the track this morning, but we don't always do that Saturday mornings. Um, but you just end up with a group of guys or people that you like to hang out with and race with and practice with, and you'll probably know this a bit. That's hired from racing with real life is that um, there's a lot of labbing that goes on with trying to figure out lines and turn-in points, and in Star Citizen there's boost strategy as well. Um, and I think one of the reasons that my team has been so successful, um, I didn't go over the accolades necessarily, but legitimately this last year, um, we never missed a podium.
nice.
Well, actually, that's not true. Maybe a couple times. And I think statistically, 56% of the races that any of our pilots competed in was a first place. Um, and for fresh, it was like 80% of the races he competed in was a first place.
Nice.
For the top guys, it was like a higher percentage. But like overall on our team, even with our slowest guys, and I'm the boat anchor now, I'm no longer the fastest. Um, but what sets us apart, I think, is our labbing and that we work together on these tracks and we spend hours together sending footage and sending different boost strategies, different lines, trying to figure out the fastest way around the track. And we end up with a huge advantage come race day. And I find the labbing of a track to be the most enjoyable part of a race is try to figure out the fastest lines, more
Interesting.
than even the race itself. So yeah,
Yeah, that
so
was never my favorite thing. I like being in a crowd. I like racing in a
yeah,
crowd. It's typically where I feel the most comfortable. I'm not a huge time trial person. I
yeah,
like to
me
rub paint.
neither.
I mean, and again, in my IRL experience, I was not a racer. I was all about car control.
Yeah,
I wish I could have gotten into racing, but that's expensive. So, but I did do some like kart racing schools and stuff like that. So I definitely understand all that. I learned how to trail brake in a kart racing school. Unfortunately,
yeah,
they no
oh, that's
longer
cool.
exist. They closed, but it was the Jim Hall Racing
Uh,
School.
that'd be
Um,
sick.
that was a lot of fun.
Trail breaking is so cool when you learn it. When you trail breaking is the introduction to realizing that racing, we're gonna go on a tangent to IRL racing again, but it's the realization that with wheels in real life is that you don't race with the wheel, and that's
Yeah,
when you realize, oh, the
everything
pedals
plays.
move me around.
Yeah, everything
Yeah,
plays a role. So, and I
Yeah.
think in Star Citizen, it's kind of similar. You're using almost everything you can in the ship. You're
Yeah, I think
using,
the boost strategy is the trail breaking of Star Citizen. It's like quite different. I wish we had. I think I got Star Citizen got me into racing. I think I mentioned that, and then I started doing like iRacing and stuff, and then I realized how shallow Star Citizen racing is compared to real life. And I mean, it's a very hard to come anywhere close to what you get in real life with any type of simulation.
yes.
But yeah, it's
I mean, I
yeah,
had
there's a lot
students
to
that
it.
spent 35 grand on their racing rigs for pressure
Yeah,
plates. I mean, I was just like, one guy was like, yeah, I spent 33, 35 grand now. I'm waiting for a new. I'm like, what the hell's wrong with you?
crazy.
Go buy a
I feel
race
bad for those
car.
guys because
I
now you
was
can
like,
get a pretty similar experience for like a fraction of the price. I feel bad for guys that spent that much in the early days of sim racing
yeah,
because
early
like you can get like a
2000s.
sim
Yeah.
headset and um uh you don't even really need to get direct drive wheels. Like the belt driven ones are almost like of course direct drive's better, but like high end belt driven ones are almost as
I
good.
still have a Thrustmaster
Um,
T300. You know,
Yeah, I used a I don't remember which one it is that I used, but it's just a belt driven one that I just maxed out the resistance on. And you can get load cell brakes for $100 now. So
yeah. I mean,
yeah,
to go back to then the talk about crafting, and I do think that you're right. When the racing guild becomes a thing, there will be like different tiers. There'll be like, are you a stock racer? Are you a,
yeah,
have you spent the last 200 hours in game figuring out how to craft the most, speed oriented parts, or the most thrust oriented parts, or the most efficient engines if you're going for like a 24-hour race, right? Like I'm
yeah.
I'm hoping refueling and stuff like that becomes more of a thing eventually. And with the introduction of wear and tear, also, how will that affect racing? How will that affect just low flying and everything else in the game? I think for
Totally,
racing, it'll be interesting. I wonder if we're. It would be. I think it would be very cool to see part failures during a long race, during
yeah,
endurance races, and
totally. This
having.
24-hour race we did, like we had pilot swaps that happened. Like they were mandatory for certain parts, but also like if you crashed or if someone was just getting tired because no one's
Mhm.
racing 24 hours straight.
Right. Yeah. Of course
Um,
not.
but that was already like a layer of depth that was so much fun. We had a ton of fun doing it. It was a great time, and I can only imagine that if you hit a point where you're monitoring your wear, or like, okay, this ship wears, this part wears after so long, this part wears after so long, your top speed comes up. That would be awesome.
Well, that would
It would
also
just the
mean
depth would just be crazy.
you'd need a pit crew. Now you need
Yep,
engineers on the side when you come in to like fix your stuff, get it back up, as best as
yep.
possible, and send you on your way. Which I think will
Now you
be.
need the back of an org.
Yeah, which then maybe I think what I would like to see is the creation of actual racing teams that are smaller, like 10 to 20 people
Hey,
groups.
that's what I'm doing right now. That's Sangos Luna.
But
That's
then, and I
like
think that
Sangos
makes
Luna is
more
one of them.
sense, like
Black Star Racing is another team. Frontier Consolidated is another team. Like this is happening now, and we're not even at that point yet where it's forced yet. But we have already using that to our advantage. So I think that'll happen. It'd be really
and I
cool.
think that makes sense, but the reason why I say those smaller groups is because one of the things that drives people crazy with Formula One, to use that example, is that everybody knows every year it's Red Bull, Mercedes, Ferrari. Like, they just have the
Hey,
most
not this
amount of
year.
money. Not this year,
Not
yeah.
this year.
McLaren.
McLaren. I'm a
McLaren.
McLaren fan. Let's go Lando.
But the McLaren was also a huge team back in the late '90s and early 2000s.
Yeah,
Hamilton won his first constructors in 2004, or
I
first
don't remember.
drivers.
I'm
Anyways,
not that well knowledgeable about it.
but yeah, they
But
those you're always only ever going to see those teams in Formula One. There's yes, Chevy or GM is coming in, whatever. Who cares?
yeah,
Cadillac. That's not a
totally. Yeah.
big deal, because they're a huge conglomerate, which just confirms the rule. So my idea with that in Star Citizen is, as Hathor was kind of a large org activity, I hope racing doesn't become a you need a huge team with a lot of backing. Let's
100%.
stay roots, not
I,
necessarily
I got
like
the same. Yeah, I know exactly what you're getting at. I had the exact same concern. I was going to mention it earlier. Hathor scared me because I don't know. Did you hear that they're adding a peregrine, um, like an upgraded version of the peregrine that you can get from Wicklow?
No, I did not know that.
Yeah. So the Saber Peregrine, which is a racing ship. Well, maybe maybe it's in a leak. Maybe I shouldn't mention it. I can't remember where I heard of it. But anyways, then the conversation became, oh shit, okay, we got to grind out the points so that we can unlock this ship if it comes out, so that we can test it and see if it's better and stuff like that. And dude, even our group of like 10, like 6 to 10 guys is not enough. It's getting held down by big orgs, right? So
Yep.
it's like it's a little scary, right? It's like I hope that it doesn't happen where all of a sudden I literally, like, not to toot my own horn, we are, in my opinion, the best racing team in Star Citizen right now. We win the majority, you know what I mean? We do
Yeah.
really, really well. But we would be immediately pushed out and would no longer be competing at the top if you had to go to Wicklow's and to get your ships for a race. And a team like Frontier Consolidated, who has the backing of a ginormous org behind them. I love Taint runs the race team. Love those guys. No, this is not like a knock against them, but they would actually have the capability and the manpower to grind that
No,
out
it's
for
just
their
a
racers, and
reality of
we
yeah.
wouldn't.
And that's just a
Yeah,
reality. And that's something that I think a lot of people saw Hathor and like, okay, that's cool, but that's a problem because, well, for a couple of reasons. One, it's not easy to, there's no looking for group in game, right? Unless you're willing to blast global chat and hopefully somebody brings you in and doesn't decide to gank
yeah,
you the second you show up. So there's that. And then, yeah, you don't want, it would just create a lot of issues, I think. And they would take
yeah,
away from the enjoyment of the game. Like you used World of Warcraft as an example earlier, and I love to use that game as an example in the MMO world. Is like, World of Warcraft works because you can do it all. You can do
yeah,
big group stuff, you can do small group stuff, you can do solo stuff. And if you're a solo player who just wants to be a part of the big group stuff, you can easily find a raid to join. You can easily find a dungeon, group to get into. It's all done with that in mind. So I
yeah,
hope that we get a little bit of that in Star Citizen because I think it would help. It would help people meet more people and not have so much of the feeling of like I can't trust anyone I come across. So, which I
yeah.
think has kind of gone away a little bit with Loot Tier Zero. Anyways, that's a whole different topic. But um,
I know what
I
you're getting at.
I don't
I don't want that to
think,
happen.
yeah, I don't want it to be I gotta join one of the biggest orgs, or my tiny little org has to team up with three other little orgs to have the manpower and hope that we have the cohesion between us to pull this off. Like that becomes a
Yeah,
lot of effort, and not everybody has the time to put into that, which
yeah,
is also something, I mentioned time sinks in this game. They're insane. You're spending this is a 2 to 3 hour investment in gaming when you get on Star
yeah.
Citizen. It's not
Like
I'm just gonna play for
I've had to cut out on my playtime lately because I have the kid and I have a lot
yeah.
of other stuff going on in real life, right? Like I've the only reason I've been able to continue competing in Star Citizen is because of our sponsorship, basically allowing, like, I don't have to worry about ships or anything like that, and I have so many guys on the team, right? But even our org is like, I wouldn't call my org large. I'd call it in the medium like category where we can easily get like 10, 15 people on and active like at a set time. Could probably push 20 to 30 if we really, really pushed to get a bunch of people out there. Um, and like pulled in some help, but like that's still not enough. I mean it is if we but like I want Speedweed to be able to have his chop shop as a solo guy. I don't want him to have
Yeah.
to go and get, like, maybe he gets like one or two helpers, or he gets like one or two connections of people who give him, feed him some resources. But I don't want him to have to get into a huge org in order to run his chop shop kind of thing, right?
No, that would be ridiculous. I don't want to have to be in an org of 200 people in order to be able to mass manufacture arrows. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's not I just don't that's not my that doesn't sound enjoyable.
No, no,
I
you should totally,
yeah.
as your own, with the support you have from your stream, should be more than enough for you to be the arrow guy who's got piles of arrows for everybody,
Now
right?
there's a
Like,
point I've been wanting to bring up with I think it's a little bit of a counter to what we've been
yeah.
saying
Oh,
in terms
sorry.
of like
One sec. I have to take a phone call. It'll be 2 seconds.
you're good. No worries. But all right. So, to kind of give you guys a recap of where we are and what we're talking about right now, because I know maybe we, we had too many tangents. But no, we're talking about how crafting will have an effect on racing, because the idea with that is we know that crafting certain tiered components will give you certain benefits, whether it be, you know, durability, power for certain components, maybe like speed
Speed, weight.
boosts, yeah,
Yeah.
weight, stuff like that, which maybe, better control surfaces. Who knows where exactly it's going to go. The chassis also are going to be a thing. You'll probably be able to already start off with a good chassis. So that's kind of what we're talking about in terms of how that'll affect racing. I think that'll also affect low flying. It'll definitely affect PvP, that's for sure. Ship combat. But the point I was trying to bring up a minute ago, and I think this is a counter to what we've been saying, because this would still allow solo racers to get into ships that have, higher tiered components and stuff like that, would be a player to player market, a
Yep.
a black market, an open market, whatever you want to call it. But
Gray market. Yeah.
gray market, yeah, wherever you can post your things for sale and another player can just go through a list and buy it. That is something that's been talked about in Star Citizen. I think that's definitely something that needs to come in sooner than later. It kind of already exists through UEX Corp and SC Trade Tools. Like, there are player to player trades you can post and people can respond to. But then you have to meet up in game, add to their friends list, and, meet up in the
Oh,
game.
it just needs to have a transport time and then just appear in your
Exactly.
slot.
Or it just needs to get
Yeah.
delivered to the other player's inventory, and boom, you're good.
Yeah.
So I think that would be something that could help maintain solo players, but they still have to grind the money to have
Hmm.
to buy this stuff, So there's still layers to it, but I think that would still open up the door, and that's something we hadn't talked about, and it's a point I've been meaning to bring up, because yeah, I think that'll be something we do truly need in game, because you brought it up kind of with the Wicklow stuff, the amount of time and the amount of people you need to go get all those uh, minerals or burritos or all that stuff that you need to hand in to
Yeah.
him. Like, that is super time consuming, and it's not something you can easily do solo at all.
No,
Um,
I mean like you look at Shadow Moses got the first Wicklow's Polaris.
nice.
Um and they got world first kind of thing.
I think there's four
And
now that have been delivered, or five.
I'm not sure. I know a couple members of Shadow Moses and anyways, that took them it was like 2 days, maybe three of around the clock manning of a server and mining it 24/7. And they also have like I can't explicitly say numbers because I'm not sure, but I can imagine it at minimum there's 10, 15 of them. At the maximum there's probably 40 to 50 of them doing it. It was probably more throughout, like maybe even 60, 70. I know that they can command up to like 60, 70 guys when they want to for an event. So, um, like it if it takes the most sweatiest of orgs a full lockdown of 3 days, you're talking if you want to the best comparison I can think of is like world first and like WoW, and it takes less than a day for like the sweatiest of org or of groups to
Yeah,
get to the get world first in WoW, right? If it takes 3 days in Star Citizen, when and you're talking and like in WoW we're talking months for like the most casuals, weeks at least for even
yeah.
more hardcore groups. If it took 3 days, it's going to be like 8, 9 months type of grinding, right? Like it's not a perfect extrapolation. I'm exaggerating here, but you can't have like if it takes a group of 15 of them 6 months to get the resources to, it's way too far.
No, it's too
Like
much.
it's too way too much. So
I mean, look at already
of
how it is
course there's
solo
context,
for
but yeah,
grinding out like bunker rep. Mercenary
yeah.
rep is
Oh,
insane. It's
yeah.
insane. I was like, I got on last night. I was like, I'm gonna do some bunkers because I haven't done that in a while, and I love doing it. And I need to get higher rep. And then I did one or two. I realized my rep barely went up. I was like, cool, I'm gonna go do something else. It's like,
I'm never gonna do it.
it's like-
Yeah.
it's too much. They really need to think about that balance a bit more. And I understand it's like, oh, we want you guys testing it, and yeah, but I'd love to test the end stuff too eventually. I don't want to grind for a year to get there.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't know. I understand wanting to test the economy and find where the economy should balance, but I don't know. We're gonna get in tangents of anti-CIG talk here. I don't understand why the hell they're not just basically giving everyone a blank check to get whatever they want kind of deal. Because it's not any economy test right now is gonna be useless data in 6 months.
Yeah, I
So
mean, depending on what they bring in, what the new contracts are, what their payouts are. I will say the payouts have been a lot better, and I really like that. If they bring
yeah.
back racing contracts, and they should, when they do, they should definitely up the payouts
Oh,
to
it's dirt.
kind of.
It's nothing. You get paid in
It was
dirt.
like 5 grand before, something like that. It was super cheap.
Like peak efficiency of grinding the best track, I think we were talking about like 500K, no less, 300K an hour. Like that's not, that's, anyways, on the
That's really
current
bad.
economy.
But I mean, how
Yeah,
much? Because you
peak
got to take in
efficiency.
fuel cost. How much does it cost to refuel? How many
You're
times did
more
you
looking at like,
die?
you're probably looking at close to 100K an hour of realistic money making.
Yeah. So I mean, because you got all those
Yeah,
expenses, if you die and need to claim a ship, that's money. If you don't want to wait
yeah,
the full amount of time, because it's either an investment in time or in cash.
yep.
So I
Yeah,
think all
and the
those
only pilots I
things.
know that could be doing those tracks consistently without ever crashing are the top percentage of pilots, which, yeah, so if it's only even viable for them to even barely make enough money, it's not. Anyways, yeah, the payouts are too little.
And to go back to Hathor, Devil makes the point of they reduced the amount needed in 4.1.1. That's great, but then the problem is still, and you mentioned this earlier, you don't think that it'll stay the hot zone forever. I agree. And Ghost Hollow is the perfect example, right? Ghost
Yeah, it's
Hollow,
dead.
it's dead. Nobody goes there because you don't make enough money. There's no
Yeah,
point, right? Like, what I'm gonna go make 150K in 30 minutes when I can run cargo and make 3 times that, like, or go mining
yeah,
for an hour and make 3 times that, like. No, I don't think it makes that much sense anymore. And they have been balancing, and I'm sure they'll continue.
yeah,
But yeah, no, there's definitely some changes that need to come in for that stuff. I hope it shouldn't be. I need to put in 20 hours of grind and game time to do an hour or two of racing, and the same
yep,
for low flying. I
yeah,
shouldn't have to grind this much to then be able to go enjoy myself, which is what it is. It should be enjoyable, right? Um, or go salvaging. Yeah, whatever it is you do to go, you shouldn't have to go do that forever to then be able to do the things you like, right? It shouldn't
yep,
be completely IRL where you spend 40 hours a week to have fun or do something nice, maybe depending on how much you work on. Anyways, like yeah, it
yeah,
should be still the reminder of it's a game. Kind of, it's a sim, yes, and there are some things that are cool in Sims, but there are also a lot of liberties Sims sometimes take to maintain the enjoyment level. And I think trading will be a huge, huge thing.
yeah.
Um, I
Better org
think
cooperation, having like org hangers, being able to use any like things like that. These
that'll
things
be
are all
cool.
gonna
Which I think those
help.
will be a part of the space stations.
Yeah,
Which will be cool if you have your racing. I also think space stations there should be different sizes. Like they should have the massive ones for big orgs. Totally, you should be able to have that. Absolutely, but you should also have smaller stations that smaller orgs can build in order to have their headquarters and pool resources. Like have your racing garage. You know what I mean? Your
yeah,
racing headquarters where you work on your ships and stuff, and
yeah.
you
It'd be
pump
sick.
out new ones. That would be awesome. I want to have a ground base where I just, like I said, I want to be pumping out 10 to 20 to 30 arrows a day, at least, so that the people
Yeah.
that I low fly with can always have a ship to replace. Or you know what I mean? Or
We wanna. I know a couple teams that want to make their own home track at a base using assets to like
yes,
set markers, and the base also pumps out razors and a spawn point for you to just happily hop in there, grab a razor, and go do some laps, and you know that. And then you
absolutely.
crash, and probably the carcass lays on the ground, and then we have someone who just goes around collecting the carcasses and reusing the materials to build the next one
Yeah,
or repair it,
salvaging
right? So.
them and then bringing them back. That would be awesome gameplay loop.
They're so
And
sick. Oh, I know people that's all they would do. They'd happily be like, "This is my life. All I do is I sit at this base. I get on at 6 p.m. I go hunt the route of the track to find all the dead ships, and I repair them, and I put another 10 razors out for the next guy." Like, like there, I know people that would love that.
that would be
So,
fun, and that would give you a reason to exist within a community, right?
yeah,
Which
yeah,
you're
people would love that guy too. You would get
yeah,
so much kudos from
right,
everyone
yeah,
for doing
everybody would
that.
be like high fives all the time, like
Yeah,
every 2 seconds. I think what I've always wanted to do, and you're right, the track layout I wanted to do that for low flyers, but like have it in a canyon so there's a ceiling. You can't come out of the canyon or you're disqualified. Like you got to stay
Yeah,
super
that'd be
low.
cool.
I've always
Yeah.
wanted to do stuff like that too. I hope
I
eventually
have some tracks you like. I got a couple tracks to show you that are low
then
fly like centric.
yes. So everybody,
Yeah.
we also talked about this during the break. We're going to be doing another stream where I learn how to race properly, and I think that'll be a lot of fun. And we'll get to see how good Durnk is. We'll get to see how bad I am, and
I'm washed. I'm washed. I it's bad lately, but I'll see if I can bring some of the if I can, I'll try to get Fresh out because Fresh would be the one that like, you know, I know that my skills are such that when the average pilot watches, they go, "Whoa, that's crazy." But I mean, when I watch Fresh, I go, "How the hell? Holy shit! How did you do that?" So it's like a whole nother level past that. So.
and I think it's cool for more and more people to see that. And I'm actually really happy,
Mhm.
even though I think it depends on how they do the racing guild. But the fact that there would be some governing body that really solidifies racing within the universe is great.
Yeah.
I would love for us low flyers to get that one day. I don't think so because we're pretty damn
Probably
niche.
be under the racing umbrella of some kind.
That's what I was thinking. Like, can we be the extreme sports umbrella?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
can we be under that? Like, you
Yeah,
know how
I do want to shout out in that idea XGR Extreme G Racing is in the game. Their name's in the game. Check next time you see the racing missions, check the description. Obviously you can't look at them now, but it says popularized by Extreme G Racing, any of the tracks that they designed, because a lot of the
nice.
tracks that are in game were actually designed by community members. And then like Snakepit is a famous example, but Icebreaker is too, another one. And then CIG
Is
shout out. He's not
Icebreaker
doesn't work.
around ArtCorp?
Icebreaker's at
Walla?
Microtech.
Or Microtech? Okay.
Yeah, Microtech, Euterpy.
Oh, okay, got you.
But
Yeah,
yeah, but shout out to he's gonna Nino. Doesn't work at CIG anymore. He's the one who originally put all the assets around the tracks and put them in. I think it was just like a little side project. So,
nice.
but he was the one that did that all, and it was amazing for racing. So
Yeah, I hope one day low fly gets some kind of recognition in game.
I hope
Um,
so.
it'd be nice. I know we don't have the same impact as the racing community, for example, but
I think you guys are bigger. Maybe not
really,
now. I know I
I
think
mean,
it's
yeah,
been,
we've had our
but I
phases,
think you
but
guys are like, I think you guys had a better peak than racing ever did. Um, I mean, maybe Daymar Rally's pretty popular. The 24 hour did have a lot of viewers. It was peaking at like 4 to 500, but it was like sitting at like, I think 200 consistently. So that was
it's pretty good.
pretty crazy. That felt cool.
I've definitely wanted to compete in one of those. We had talked about that with
Should.
Shaky. I forget which one we were supposed to compete in, and then the game just was no bueno. So
Yeah.
everybody just kind of was like, nah. But I would
Yeah.
still love to do that. I mean, get some lessons because I used to watch Kelsar a lot. I still go and hang out on stream and just lurk and watch sometimes when he's training. Shugo
Uh,
too. Yeah,
yeah. Speaking of, it's supposed to be open now, but it hasn't. Speaking of registrations for races, XGR has just announced the Division Racing again, which is Division Racing. It was like the pinnacle of highest skill pilots go to do that, and they've just announced sign up. So there's more races happening.
nice. Well, I mean, then
They
hopefully
literally
with
just put it out.
stability, that's there can be more regular races.
Yeah,
Um, that'll be
yeah.
good.
The last divisions race had to basically get canceled because it was unplayable. It was brutal. I left early on. I did try to do one heat. I went. I'm sorry, guys. I can't. And I left, and they canceled it like two heats later. And literally everyone went to me and were like, "You made the right call, just leaving," because it wasn't fun. I saw the writing on the wall early on that one, which was unfortunate.
It's
But
kind of what happened to us a couple weeks ago, unfortunately. And
yeah,
yeah, I mean, there's the debate whether it would have been better off in Pyro because there's a lot more people in Stanton. But anyways, like, in
yeah,
any case, it'd be nice to get to a point where you can do these things in game, and dynamic server meshing. It's really what's going to allow it. It's really hard to
totally.
get 100 players in the same spot
Yeah,
without
dynamic
killing
server
a
mission will
server.
save it a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do also, because I think we might be getting short on time for
Yep.
me. But I do want to shout out Punch Nomies today, who won race 4 and 5 in System 7. That's Atmo
Oh,
Esports,
nice.
like big ground racing competition. Punch Nomies is Kale Sar, Shugo the lucky one,
Yep.
Herbie and Gerbo, and they're all kind of. I mean, Shugo and Herbie, we're still kind of trying to convince them to really do it, but they're all members of Sanguis Luna too. So all I'm saying, man, best racing team in the verse. We win everything.
Well, no, drop their link. Let's shout them out. Yeah, congrats to those guys. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Um, if oh yeah, if you have a link for the podcast, or sorry, the stream, yeah, throw that up. Let's definitely share that so people can go check in on that. And I'll make sure to
Oh,
drop all
it's
those
like
links on the
finishing up
YouTube
right
too.
now. There's two drivers finishing, but that's where the stream is. You might be able to catch the VOD on there.
Nice.
But Abo does a good like Abo does a great job of putting on some of these events. Like they are like their production is top tier. They put on the LAN event at last year's SitCon, and it's a real shame that there's no SitCon in person this year because everyone was anticipating another LAN race event with an actual qualifier because last year's was more like a fun event at Enter Atmosphere where they just invited the best racers that they knew were going to CitizenCon.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but there was rumors that there was going to be a qualifier into the next LAN, and it doesn't look like that's going to be well, we'll see. I don't know. They haven't announced anything. Um, but I would be surprised if we have that this year now that there's no SitCon. But Atmo puts on some of the coolest events for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, I look forward to learning how to actually race a little bit more. Because I mean, you can
Yeah.
ask some of the people who, if they ever even remember me trying it on stream, like it was just terrible. It's just terrible. But I
Well,
also didn't
hey,
choose the right
how long are you
tracks.
streaming today? When are you done? What's your timeline like today?
Oh well, once we say goodbyes, I'm gonna have to kill it. That way I can do some editing. I have my React from Thursday that I finished editing and I'm going to upload, but because it's a long one, I couldn't do it at the same time as we were streaming because that would just kill all my bandwidth.
Yeah,
So,
of course.
but that'll go up after this. To everybody, make sure to go check out the YouTube. I'm actually really happy. I had a short that did really well too, and then
Nice.
the this podcast should be up on YouTube Monday at the latest. Hopefully, just depends on how long it takes me to get through the edit. Um, and then I'm gonna need a whole bunch of links from you, so that I can link all that in the YouTube, so that everybody gets the
Yeah.
proper shout out and everybody can find the right the right info. And then after you teach me how to race, we're gonna have to get you into doing some low flying stuff with us.
Yeah, I love low flying. I like doing it. It's funny the racing community. Some of the guys they prefer. Have you heard of hooning?
What's that?
Hooning is low flying but without a speed limiter. So.
So yeah, we just call that unlim. I love
Okay. Yeah.
doing that. The reason why we don't do it as groups is because, and I know this from IRL, it gets incredibly hard to keep your distances because,
Totally.
so I actually have taught people how to drive in stunts, like and
Like next
maintain your
street driver, right?
position and have a certain speed.
Yeah.
There's a way to do that. It takes practice and it takes some sort of organization. You can't just everybody shows up and you know what you're doing. That's why the
Yeah.
limiter for us is incredibly helpful. It's the only way we can, without putting people through some sort of training and learning how to do it as a group, that you can get these big groups that fly so close together.
Yeah.
For example, a quick example of IRL is if I'm setting up, I'm sure a lot of people have seen those shots where you're going around an oval, right? And all the cars are in line.
Yeah.
That takes some skill. It's not
Oh yeah.
just, you don't
Oh,
use cruise control,
believe me,
that doesn't
I've
exist.
done
Like, yeah,
oval racing and iRacing at the bottom in the bottom rating tier. I trust. Yeah. It takes skill because
there's,
you don't even survive the formation laps half the time
yeah, because
in ovals.
everybody's not taking into account that the inside has a shorter distance to travel than the outside. And who are you basing
Mhm.
your speed off of? And so when you're doing that to carry like a stunt, there's one person who's designated lead. Their only
Yeah.
job is to maintain their line and their speed. They don't give a crap about anything that's going on behind them. Then everybody
Right.
else goes off of them, finds a spot to sticks to, and they are not so much worried about their speed more as they are worried about holding that line. And
Cool.
we talk about like little movements using your toes essentially on the gas to make
Yeah.
adjustments. You can't really put it in, it would not work actually in cruise control. That just, it would get really weird.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not like Star Citizen where it's a straight up lock to total speed.
Yeah.
Cruise control would still have. Yeah.
So there's
Yeah.
like, and a lot of us low flyers are just pretty chill people who don't like to take it too seriously, but at the same time, like we practice a lot because it's enjoyable. But
Yep.
I haven't really found the people to do that with yet. I'd love to one day, but I mean, I still put my low flying videos together. I've been wanting to do Machinima and Star Citizen forever now too. So hopefully I'll get a script finished and do that as well. But um,
Yeah.
there's tons of cool stuff you can do in this game, and I mean, just I don't know if anybody's been paying attention to what's going on in the background. Like, yeah, you can.
I've just been watching it while we've been talking, so it's fun. Yeah.
There's it does get pretty fun. But yeah, I think
I keep recognizing that clip when you crash on the ledge there. Every time I recognize it as it's coming up. Yeah.
yeah, I gotta. It's the crashes are a part of it, right? You know, I have a
Oh,
crash
they are.
counter.
It's part of racing.
Let's
Crash more, crash
see.
less.
This should work. Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
my crash counter is at 852. It's quite a
Ooh,
few
nice.
crashes.
I would don't want to see my counter. It's
Yeah.
probably worse. But yeah, no, I want to get on. We'll do some racing together, and et aussi nous allons faire des choses en français parce que je veux qu'il y
Ouais.
a je veux qu'il y a plus de gens francophones qui fait les courses. Parce qu'au moment, il y a seulement la seule personne que je connais qui est très bon à les courses, c'est Boltok. C'est le seul.
Bah, à ce moment-là, ce qu'il faudrait qu'on fasse, c'est ouais, on va replanifier un stream sur la course, mais en français. Et on invitera les quelques pilotes qui sont intéressés et francophones. Et à ce moment-là, on peut peut-être essayer de pousser ça sur la communauté française.
Mais
Parce que c'est vrai que c'est marrant et ce serait bien que ça grandisse un peu aussi.
oui, le communauté français, dans toutes les choses, dans les jeux de vidéo, je trouve qu'il est toujours les meilleurs. Comme dans Rocket League, il y a aussi les Français sont les meilleurs Rocket League. Dans Low Fly, ils sont les meilleurs. Même dans les courses Star Citizen, c'est beau talk pour de très longtemps, il était le meilleur à les courses dans Star Citizen. Et c'est seulement la dernière année où il y a des gens qui ont amélioré au point qu'il est meilleur que Boltok.
Ah, bah, c'est cool, je savais pas ça. Si tu as son lien, balance-le dans le chat aussi. Mais comme ça, on peut envoyer les
Oui, je pense
Français
qu'il y a
voir.
une YouTube.
S'il a un YouTube, ouais, j'irai regarder aussi, j'irai lui lâcher un sub.
Yeah, we can
Mais
go to
voilà.
English because everyone's like all confused right now. They're like, "What are
Wait,
you?"
what?
Like they
Wait, what?
just changed. They just
Oh, they're
swapped.
used to
Yeah, I
that
don't
with
get the
me. I go back and forth. Yo, what's up, zombie? Is it
duck
more
tea.
duck tea?
Yeah. No, what I was saying, and I'll say it in English, is genuine. I would love for the French community in Star Citizen Racing to grow because I genuinely think, for whatever reason, France is like the best at video games. Like I don't know what it is. Like maybe it's not the case. It's just every game that I play or that I follow, France has the best. So. And I know the French community is really huge in Star Citizen. I think that there's like a huge untapped potential there because they just don't participate in racing stuff very much.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting. I thought because the French have always had great racing drivers throughout.
Yeah.
And the French toast is also fantastic, but it's not really French because you know what we call it in French? We call it pain perdu, lost bread.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nowhere is that a direct translation. Don't worry. Like it's literally lost bread, pain perdu in French. So,
Yeah.
anyways, so but yeah, you know, France has always had a very strong driving culture. It's unfortunate in the last 10 years they've really done their best to destroy it in France, but
Yeah.
it still
Sucks.
exists. And
Yeah.
I and yeah, I'd love to see more of the Frenchies get involved in that because yeah, there's a lot of Frenchies involved in low flying. There could be more. So, and yeah, I think we can try and make that happen. I'm not against that at all.
Well, like isn't like the biggest low flyer Tarada, or I guess like just the most viewed on YouTube.
Yeah, Terada
Yeah.
is definitely one of them. And then there's Ryu Sombreciel is also really big and blowing up, and he does great stuff, and he's
Uh,
really chill. And I'm sure there's
Shout
some
out
I'm forgetting, and I'm
Papillon.
sorry.
Shout out
Papillon
Papillon
SC,
aussi.
who's my
Yeah.
training buddy half the time. Uh,
Yeah.
I love him. He when I was really trying to get into it, I spent a lot of time training with him. Him and
Yeah.
Darkness were were fantastic teachers. Sorry,
That's
I
cool.
also have to shout out Father's Game and Bigfoot, who were also fantastic teachers, and those two are
Shout out
really the
Purple Known.
ones.
He doesn't low fly, but shout him out too. Sorry.
Yeah, no, no,
Yeah.
you gotta shout them all out because it's really a group of really cool people, and they're all worth hanging around, and that's really what got me into it. It's one of the reasons why I love the low fly community so much is just everyone's so supportive, so chill. There's very little bad blood within the community. It's a
Yeah.
pretty clean community, and yeah, it's just
Yeah. Same with racing. Pretty. Everyone helps everyone and is always really happy to help everybody. So it's really cool.
and yeah, and I hope yeah, it continues to grow like that. It's
How much stuff in America they say French and the product is not actual French? 90% of it.
probably yeah. I was trying to think of like specific. French fries aren't really French, by the way. They're more
Yeah.
Belgian. But anyway, what else? I don't know. Yeah, there's a few things. You can't.
If you're in America, you've never had real poutine, by the way.
Yeah, I'm waiting to go to Canada to get real poutine.
You can do it yourself. You just need to get cheese curds. They're just cheese curds don't exist in America.
Feel lied to, zombie. Well, I'm sorry. Don't believe everything you see on TV. But yeah. So all right. Well, thank you everybody. Thank you to Durnk. Really appreciate you coming on and doing this. This was a lot of fun. I learned a lot about
Yeah.
racing. Definitely more interested. I'll make sure to get all the links so that when I post this on YouTube, they'll all be there in the description, and everybody can just go check everything out. And yeah, thanks again, guys. This was so much fun. Again, I got to say thank you to Zombie. Thank you for those biddies. Thank you for all those gifted subs. Thank you to Shaky. You guys were all awesome. Thank you to Oni for your biddies. Thank you, everybody. I had a ton of fun. This was a really good episode. I'm glad. And yeah, we'll stream again tomorrow. Racing, I'll let you guys know when we can get that put together, and then I'll make sure to put in the Discord when the video goes live. And yeah, again, I just want a big thank you to Durnk.
Thanks, buddy.
And yeah, we'll see you hopefully soon. And yeah, I'll see all of you tomorrow for stream. So yeah, let's go ahead and throw up. Oh, I should probably do a proper YouTube outro. Hold up.
Yeah. Lock in.
Thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you appreciated that podcast. If you made it this far, please consider, or actually, no, don't consider. Give me a like and subscribe. No, I'm kidding. It
Do it.
really helps the channel, and, definitely will keep bringing you guys more of this stuff. I'll let you guys know when the next podcast will be out. If you're curious, make sure to join the Discord. Link will be in the description. And yeah, thanks, everybody. I'll see you soon.